Let's embark on one of humanity's most remarkable journeys, the first people of the Americas. Have you ever wondered how humans first arrived in North America? The story begins around 20,000 years ago, during the last ice age, when our ancestors made an incredible trek that would change the course of human history. Picture a world very different from the one we know today. During the last glacial maximum, massive ice sheets covered much of North America, and sea levels were much lower than they are now. This lower sea level exposed a vast land bridge connecting present-day Siberia to Alaska. We call this bridge Beringia, and it served as the gateway for the first humans to enter the Americas. But who were these first pioneers? They were groups of people from Asia, likely from Siberia, who were following herds of large animals they hunted for survival. These weren't just casual wanderers. They were skilled hunters and gatherers who had developed sophisticated tools and hunting techniques to survive in harsh environments. The journey across Beringia wasn't a simple walk across a bridge. Beringia was actually a vast territory, approximately 1,000 miles wide, that existed for thousands of years. What many people don't realize is that this wasn't a barren, frozen wasteland. Despite the Ice Age conditions, Beringia supported a diverse ecosystem known as the Mammoth Steppe. This landscape was filled with grasses and small shrubs that supported large herbivores like woolly mammoths, bison, and caribou. These early migrants didn't just cross in one massive group at a single time. Instead, the peoples of the Americas likely occurred in several waves over thousands of years. Some groups may have traveled along the coastline, using boats to move south along the Pacific coast. Others might have followed an inland route, traveling through ice-free corridors that formed between massive ice sheets. What's particularly fascinating is how these early people adapted to new environments as they moved south. Think about the challenges they faced: new landscapes, different plant and animal species, varying climates. These pioneers had to constantly innovate and adjust their survival strategies. They developed new tools, learned about local food sources, and created new hunting techniques. The evidence for this epic journey comes from various sources. Archaeologists have discovered ancient campsites, tools, and human remains that help piece together this story. One of the most significant sites is in Monteverde, Chile, which shows human occupation dating back to at least 14,500 years ago. This site proves just how quickly these early people spread throughout the Americas, traveling from Alaska all the way to the southern tip of South America. But what drove these people to undertake such an ambitious journey? While we can't know their exact motivations, scientists believe several factors were at play. Following animal herds for food was likely a primary reason. As these herds moved, the hunters followed. Additionally, population pressure and climate changes in Asia might have encouraged groups to explore new territories. The genetic evidence tells us an interesting story too. DNA studies of indigenous peoples throughout the Americas show clear links to Asian populations, particularly those from Siberia. This genetic evidence helps confirm the archaeological record and our understanding of human migration patterns. These first Americans weren't just survivors, they were the founders of countless cultures and civilizations that would develop throughout North and South America. Their journey marks the beginning of the human story in the Americas, leading to the development of diverse societies, from the Maya and Aztec civilizations to the Incan Empire and numerous North American nations. What's particularly remarkable about this migration is its lasting impact. These early pioneers became the ancestors of all indigenous peoples in the Americas. Their journey led to the development of countless unique cultures, languages, and ways of life adapted to every environment from the Arctic to Tierra del Fuego. Understanding this migration helps us appreciate several important points about human history. First, it shows our species' incredible adaptability and resilience. These early people survived and thrived in some of the most challenging conditions imaginable. Second, it reminds us that humans have always been explorers, pushing into new territories and adapting to new environments. Finally, it demonstrates how significantly climate change can impact human movement and settlement patterns. As we continue to study this remarkable journey, new discoveries are constantly being made. Advanced dating techniques, genetic studies, and archaeological findings continue to refine our understanding of when and how people first arrived in the Americas. Each new discovery adds another piece to this fascinating puzzle of human migration. The story of the first Americans is more than just a tale of migration, it's a testament to human ingenuity, courage, and adaptability. These early pioneers set in motion a chain of events that would lead to the rich tapestry of cultures that would eventually populate two entire continents. Their footsteps marked the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one that continues to influence our world today. As we continue our journey through ancient North American history, we encounter one of the most fascinating and technologically advanced prehistoric cultures, the Clovis people. But who were they, and why are they so significant in understanding our continent's past? The story begins approximately 13,500 years ago, following the arrival of early humans across the Bering Land Bridge. These early inhabitants would develop into what archaeologists now call the Clovis culture, named after Clovis, New Mexico, where their distinctive artifacts were first discovered in 1929. Have you ever wondered how a single discovery could revolutionize our understanding of ancient America? The Clovis people were master craftsmen, and their most remarkable innovation was their distinctive spear point technology. These points were unlike anything seen before. They were large, typically ranging from 4 to 5 inches in length, and featured a unique fluted base. This fluting, a groove carved at the base of the point, was a revolutionary development. Why? Because it allowed the point to be securely attached to a wooden spear shaft, creating a more effective hunting weapon. The manufacturing process of these Clovis points demonstrates remarkable sophistication. Craftsmen would carefully select high-quality stone materials, often traveling long distances to obtain the best possible resources. The most commonly used materials were chert, obsidian, and fine-grained basalts. Through a precise sequence of strikes and pressure flaking, they would shape these materials into their characteristic form. The fluting process itself was particularly challenging. One wrong strike could destroy hours of work. But what made these points so special? The Clovis point design was incredibly effective for hunting large game. The fluted base allowed for better penetration and easier replacement if the point broke during a hunt. This technology gave the Clovis people a significant advantage in hunting the megafauna of the late Pleistocene epoch, including mammoths, mastodons, and giant bison. The Clovis hunting strategy was equally sophisticated. Evidence suggests they used a combination of group coordination and landscape features to their advantage. They would often drive large animals into natural traps, such as bogs or box canyons, where the animals would be more vulnerable. This required detailed knowledge of both animal behavior and terrain, a testament to their advanced understanding of their environment. The distribution of Clovis sites across North America tells us another important story. These distinctive spear points have been found from Alaska to northern Mexico and from California to the eastern seaboard. This wide distribution raises an intriguing question: how did this technology spread so rapidly across such a vast territory? The answer lies in the mobility and adaptability of the Clovis people. They were not just hunters, they were explorers and innovators. They followed game herds, established new territories, and shared their technological knowledge with other groups. This explains why we find such remarkable consistency in Clovis point design across thousands of miles. The Clovis culture also gives us insights into early social organization. The complexity of their hunting strategies suggests they lived in well-organized groups, sharing knowledge and resources. The quality of their tool-making indicates they had systems for teaching and passing down specialized skills from one generation to the next. These weren't just random bands of hunters, they were sophisticated societies with complex social structures. Archaeological evidence shows that the Clovis people were more than just big game hunters. They were opportunistic foragers who utilized a wide range of resources, including smaller game, plants, and aquatic resources. This adaptability was crucial for their survival and spread across diverse environments. The Clovis culture's influence on subsequent Native American cultures cannot be overstated. Their technological innovations set the stage for thousands of years of indigenous development in North America. Many later point styles show clear influences from Clovis design, though adapted for different purposes and prey. However, the Clovis culture also presents us with one of archaeology's great mysteries. Around 12,800 years ago, their distinctive point style suddenly disappears from the archaeological record. This coincides with the extinction of many large Pleistocene mammals and significant climate changes. What caused this abrupt change? Was it climate change, overhunting, or some combination of factors? The legacy of the Clovis culture continues to influence our understanding of early American prehistory. Their technological achievements demonstrate that our earliest ancestors were far from primitive. They were innovative, adaptable, and sophisticated in their understanding of their environment. The Clovis culture represents a crucial chapter in the human story of North America, showing how technology, adaptation, and social organization combined to create one of the most successful prehistoric cultures on the continent. As we reflect on the Clovis culture, we're reminded that innovation and adaptation have always been key to human survival. Their story continues to inspire new questions and research, helping us better understand not just where we came from, but who we are as a species. Have you ever wondered what it would be like to face a creature 3 times the size of an elephant, armed with nothing but stone-tipped spears and your wit? This was the reality for the early Americans who specialized in hunting mammoths during the Ice Age, approximately 13,000 to 11,000 years ago. The story of mammoth hunters is one of remarkable human ingenuity and survival. These early Americans developed sophisticated hunting strategies that allowed them to take down massive prey that could weigh up to 12 tons. But why would they risk their lives hunting such dangerous animals? The answer lies in the tremendous rewards these hunts provided. A single mammoth could feed an entire community for weeks or even months. Every part of the mammoth was utilized, making these hunts crucial for survival. The meat provided essential protein and fat, which was particularly important during the harsh Ice Age climate. The bones were used to create tools and even temporary shelters. The hide could be used for clothing and shelter, while the sinews became strong, natural rope. Even the internal organs had specific uses. The stomach could be used as a water container, and the intestines could be processed into waterproof clothing. The hunting techniques these early Americans developed were remarkably sophisticated. Archaeological evidence shows they used several different strategies. One common approach was the jump-kill method, where hunters would strategically drive mammoths toward cliff edges or into natural traps like bogs or deep snow drifts. This required extensive planning and coordination among group members. Another technique involved the use of fire and noise to panic and direct the mammoth herds. Hunters would strategically position themselves along likely escape routes, waiting with their spears. This method required intimate knowledge of mammoth behavior and careful timing. The weapons they used were specifically designed for mammoth hunting. The Clovis points, which we learned about in the previous act, were particularly effective. These distinctive spear points were crafted to penetrate the thick hide and muscle of mammoths. The fluted base allowed for secure attachment to wooden shafts, creating weapons that could be both thrown and thrust. Archaeological sites across North America provide clear evidence of these hunting practices. One of the most famous is the Lena site in Arizona, where archaeologists found the remains of 13 mammoths along with Clovis points. This site suggests a well-organized hunt where multiple animals were taken down at once. The social organization required for mammoth hunting was complex. It wasn't just about the hunt itself, the entire community played crucial roles. While some members participated in the actual hunt, others would be responsible for processing the meat, treating the hides, and crafting tools from the bones. This division of labor helped ensure the entire community's survival. But mammoth hunting wasn't just about survival. It also played a significant role in the social and cultural development of these early Americans. Successful hunters gained prestige within their communities, and hunting techniques were passed down through generations, becoming part of their cultural heritage. The environmental impact of mammoth hunting has been a subject of scientific debate. While some researchers argue that human hunting contributed to the extinction of mammoths, others point to climate change as the primary factor. The truth likely involves a combination of both factors, along with other environmental pressures. The skills developed during this period had lasting effects on human development in the Americas. The organizational abilities, tool-making techniques, and hunting strategies that evolved during the mammoth hunting era formed the foundation for later hunting and gathering societies. The legacy of these mammoth hunters can still be seen in the archaeological record today. Sites across North America continue to yield new information about their hunting practices, tools, and way of life. Every new discovery helps us better understand how these early Americans adapted to their environment and survived in what was often a harsh and unforgiving landscape. What's particularly fascinating is how these early hunters developed such effective strategies without modern technology. They relied on careful observation, passed down knowledge, and innovation to succeed. Their understanding of animal behavior, weather patterns, and the landscape was crucial to their survival. The end of the mammoth hunting era came gradually, as climate change led to the extinction of these massive creatures. However, the skills and social organizations developed during this period helped these communities adapt to hunting other large game animals that remained, such as bison and elk. This period in human history demonstrates the remarkable adaptability of our ancestors. They not only survived but thrived in challenging conditions, developing complex hunting strategies and social structures that would influence human development for thousands of years to come. The story of the mammoth hunters is not just about hunting, it's about human ingenuity, cooperation, and the ability to adapt to changing circumstances. As the Ice Age drew to a close and the massive mammals began to disappear, the early inhabitants of North America needed to adapt to new ways of living. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors transitioned from being nomadic hunters to settling in more permanent homes? The story of the cave dwellers of the Southwest provides fascinating insights into this crucial period of human history. Around 10,000 years ago, people began seeking shelter in the natural caves and rock overhangs that dotted the American Southwest's landscape. These weren't the deep, dark caverns you might imagine. Instead, they were often shallow alcoves carved into cliff faces by natural erosion over millions of years. But why did they choose these particular locations? The answer lies in the practical advantages these natural shelters offered. The caves provided protection from harsh weather conditions, including both the scorching summer heat and cold winter winds. The rock formations above created natural roofs that kept rain out while offering defensive positions against potential threats. More importantly, many of these caves were situated near water sources and fertile valleys, making them ideal locations for early settlement. These early cave dwellers began developing more sophisticated tools than their mammoth hunting predecessors. They crafted specialized implements for grinding seeds and processing plants, showing a shift from purely hunting-based subsistence to a more diverse diet that included gathered plants and small game. Stone mortars and pestles became common tools, and we find their remains in many cave sites today. One of the most significant developments during this period was the emergence of cave art. The walls of many southwestern caves bear witness to the creative expressions of these ancient peoples. But what drove them to create these images? The art wasn't merely decorative, it served as a form of communication, recording important events, marking territorial boundaries, and possibly playing roles in spiritual ceremonies. The cave art typically featured geometric patterns, handprints, and depictions of animals and human figures. The artists used natural pigments derived from minerals like hematite, red, limonite, yellow, and charcoal, black. These paintings provide valuable insights into their daily lives, beliefs, and the animals they encountered. The cave dwellers developed sophisticated methods for storing food and water, essential for surviving in the arid Southwest. They carved storage spaces into cave walls and created ceramic vessels, marking the beginning of pottery making in North America. This technology represented a significant advance, as it allowed for better food preservation and water storage. These communities began practicing early forms of agriculture, planting small gardens near their cave homes. They cultivated early varieties of corn, beans, and squash, the famous three sisters of Native American agriculture. This marked a crucial transition from purely hunting and gathering to more settled agricultural life. Social structures became more complex during this period. The cave settlements grew larger, housing extended family groups. Evidence suggests they developed trade networks with other communities, exchanging goods like shells, pottery, and tool-making materials. How did they maintain these networks across the challenging southwestern terrain? They established well-worn paths that later became major trade routes. The cave dwellers also developed sophisticated water management systems. They learned to direct rainfall runoff into natural catchments and built small dams to create water reserves. These engineering achievements demonstrate their growing understanding of their environment and their ability to modify it to meet their needs. Their tool technology evolved significantly. Beyond basic stone tools, they created specialized implements for woodworking, basket making, and leather processing. They developed atlatls, spear throwers, for hunting, significantly improving their hunting efficiency. The discovery of numerous tool-making workshops in caves shows they had designated areas for different activities. The cave dwellers' lifestyle influenced their social organization. Living in fixed locations meant they needed to develop new ways of organizing their communities. Evidence suggests they had designated areas for sleeping, cooking, storage, and tool-making within their cave homes. This spatial organization provides early examples of architectural planning. These communities also developed complex burial practices. They often buried their dead within the caves, sometimes with grave goods that provide insights into their beliefs about the afterlife and social structure. What can these burial practices tell us about their spiritual beliefs? The careful arrangement of bodies and inclusion of personal items suggests they held strong beliefs about life after death. The legacy of these cave dwellers extends far beyond their time. Their settlements laid the groundwork for the more complex Pueblo communities that would follow. Their agricultural practices, water management systems, and trade networks established patterns that influenced southwestern cultures for thousands of years. The cave dwellers represent a crucial transition in human history, the shift from nomadic hunting to settled living. Their adaptations to the challenging southwestern environment demonstrated remarkable ingenuity and resilience. Through their innovations in toolmaking, agriculture, and community organization, they established the foundations for the complex civilizations that would emerge in the American Southwest. Their story reminds us that human adaptation and innovation often arise from necessity, and that the basic needs for shelter, food, and community have always driven human development. What lessons can we learn from these ancient cave dwellers about sustainability and adaptation in challenging environments? The story of human survival and progress is deeply intertwined with our relationship with plants. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors first learned which plants were safe to eat and which could be deadly? The Gathering Revolution marks a pivotal moment in human history when our ancestors developed sophisticated knowledge about plant resources and transformed their way of life. Around 8,000 to 10,000 years ago, Native American communities across North America began to systematically gather and process wild plants for food. This wasn't simply picking berries or collecting nuts, it was a complex system of knowledge that developed over generations. These early people learned to identify hundreds of different plant species, understanding their growing seasons, preferred habitats, and nutritional values. One of the most significant developments during this period was the processing of plant materials to make them edible and more nutritious. Take acorns, for example. Raw acorns contain toxic tannins that make them inedible. However, indigenous peoples discovered that by grinding the acorns into flour and repeatedly washing them with water, they could remove these harmful compounds. This process transformed a toxic nut into a stable, nutritious food source that could be stored for months. The gathering of wild seeds became particularly important in the Great Basin region. Here, communities developed specialized tools for harvesting and processing seeds. They created beaters, tools made from woven basketry that could knock seeds from plants into collection baskets. They also invented milling stones and grinding slabs to process these seeds into flour. These technological innovations dramatically increased the efficiency of food gathering and processing. But why was this period revolutionary? The answer lies in how it transformed human society. The Gathering Revolution wasn't just about collecting food, it represented humanity's first steps toward understanding and managing their environment. Communities began to recognize that certain areas produced more abundant plant resources than others. They started timing their movements to coincide with the ripening of different plant species across different locations. This knowledge led to the development of seasonal rounds, planned movements that followed the availability of different plant resources throughout the year. For instance, Communities might gather spring greens in lowland areas, move to higher elevations for summer berries, and return to valley floors for fall nut harvests. Can you imagine the detailed environmental knowledge required to coordinate these movements? The revolution also sparked significant technological innovations. Communities developed sophisticated storage systems to preserve gathered plants for lean times. They created specialized baskets for gathering different types of plants, invented new tools for processing plant materials, and developed methods for preserving foods through drying and other techniques. Women played a crucial role in this revolution. They were often the primary gatherers and processors of plant foods, and they passed their knowledge down through generations. They became experts in plant identification, processing techniques, and storage methods. Their expertise was essential for community survival and formed the foundation of many indigenous cultures' traditional ecological knowledge. The gathering revolution also had profound social implications. The ability to process and store plant foods allowed communities to support larger populations and spend more time in one place. This led to the development of more complex social organizations and the establishment of more permanent settlements. Communities began to develop territories and establish relationships with neighboring groups to share resources and knowledge. The skills and knowledge developed during this period didn't disappear with the advent of agriculture. Many of these gathering and processing techniques continued to be used alongside farming, and some are still practiced by indigenous communities today. This knowledge has proven valuable for modern ethnobotanists studying traditional plant uses and for understanding sustainable resource management. The gathering revolution teaches us an important lesson about human innovation and adaptation. It shows how careful observation, experimentation, and the passing down of knowledge through generations can lead to transformative changes in how humans interact with their environment. What started as simple plant collection evolved into a sophisticated system of resource management that shaped human society for thousands of years. This period laid the groundwork for later agricultural developments and continues to influence our understanding of plant resources today. The next time you eat a processed grain product or take an herbal supplement, remember that you're benefiting from knowledge that began to develop during the gathering revolution, when our ancestors first began to unlock the secrets of the plant world. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors managed to survive and thrive without the sophisticated tools we have today? The story of human tool development is a fascinating journey that spans millions of years, marking one of the most crucial chapters in human evolution. Let's explore how our ancestors transformed simple stones into life-changing tools that would forever alter the course of human history. The dawn of tool-making begins with the most basic implementation, the stone chopper. Around 2.6 million years ago, our early ancestors discovered that breaking one rock against another could create sharp edges. But why was this discovery so revolutionary? Imagine trying to break open a tough nut or cut through thick hide with just your hands and teeth. These early stone tools, though crude by today's standards, represented a massive leap forward in human capability. The Oldowan toolkit, named after Olduvai Gorge in Tanzania, where many such tools were discovered, represents humanity's first technological innovation. These tools were simple but effective. Rocks that were knocked against each other to create sharp-edged flakes. The process, known as knapping, involves striking a coarse stone with a hammerstone to chip off useful pieces. The resulting flakes were sharp enough to cut meat from carcasses and break open bones to access nutritious marrow, a crucial protein source for our developing ancestors. But our ancestors didn't stop there. As their understanding of stone properties grew, so did their tool-making sophistication. Around 1.76 million years ago, a new technology emerged, the Acheulean hand axe. What made these tools special? Unlike the random shapes of Oldowan tools, Acheulean implements were deliberately shaped into specific forms, showing the first signs of standardized tool design in human history. The Acheulean hand axe was teardrop-shaped and worked on both sides, bifacial, creating a versatile tool that could be used for multiple purposes. Think of it as the Stone Age equivalent of a Swiss Army knife. These tools required significantly more skill to create, demonstrating increasing cognitive capabilities in our ancestors. The maker had to hold a mental template of the finished product in their mind while working the stone, a clear sign of growing intellectual sophistication. As time progressed, tool-making techniques became increasingly refined. The Middle Paleolithic period, about 300,000 to 30,000 years ago, saw the development of the levallois technique. This method involved carefully preparing a coarse stone to remove flakes of predetermined shape and size. Why was this important? It showed that our ancestors could now plan ahead and visualize the end product before beginning their work, a significant cognitive advancement. The Upper Paleolithic period, starting around 40,000 years ago, brought even more sophisticated stone tool technologies. Blade tools, long and thin flakes struck from specially prepared cores, became common. These blades could be modified into a variety of specialized tools: scrapers for working hide, burins for engraving, and points for hunting. The level of craftsmanship reached new heights, with some tools showing remarkable precision and aesthetic quality. But stone tool technology wasn't just about the tools themselves, it was about the impact they had on human society. These tools allowed our ancestors to access new food sources, create clothing, build shelters, and eventually develop art and symbolic expression. They were the key that unlocked new possibilities for human development and survival. The process of making these tools also played a crucial role in human cognitive development. The need to select appropriate materials, plan a knapping sequence, and teach these skills to others helped develop our capacity for complex thought and social learning. Have you ever tried to explain a complicated task to someone else? This kind of knowledge transmission was vital for human cultural evolution. The development of stone tools also had far-reaching effects on human social organization. Good tool-making materials weren't available everywhere, leading to the first trade networks. Communities began to interact and exchange not just materials, but ideas and techniques as well. This social networking would prove crucial for human development and innovation. As we trace the evolution of stone tools, we see a clear progression from simple choppers to sophisticated blades, reflecting the increasing cognitive capabilities of our ancestors. Each innovation built upon previous knowledge, creating a cumulative cultural tradition that would eventually lead to the complex technologies we have today. The story of stone tools is really the story of human ingenuity and adaptability. It shows how our ancestors used their growing intelligence to solve problems and create solutions that would help them not just survive, but thrive in their environment. Isn't it remarkable to think that the smartphone in your pocket can trace its technological ancestry back to a simple stone chopper made millions of years ago? This legacy of innovation continues to influence us today. The principles of problem-solving and tool adaptation that our ancestors developed still guide modern technology development. When we design new tools or improve existing ones, we're following in the footsteps of those first toolmakers who looked at a stone and saw its potential to change their world. Have you ever wondered what made our ancestors decide to stop wandering and settle in one place? The story of the first villagers represents one of the most significant transitions in human history, the moment when our species began to establish permanent homes and build communities. Around 12,000 years ago, something remarkable started happening across different parts of the world. People who had been living as nomadic hunter-gatherers for countless generations began to stay put. This wasn't a sudden change that happened overnight. It was a gradual process that occurred independently in various regions, from the Fertile Crescent in the Middle East to parts of Asia and the Americas. What exactly drove this monumental shift? The answer lies in a combination of factors that came together at the right time. The end of the last ice age brought more stable climate conditions, making it possible for people to rely on specific areas for food resources. As humans had developed better tools and gained more knowledge about plants, they began to understand how seeds grew into plants. This understanding led to the first experiments with deliberately growing food, the beginnings of agriculture. The earliest villages weren't anything like our modern towns. They started as small clusters of circular or rectangular houses, often made from whatever materials were locally available: mud bricks, stone, wood, or even animal bones and hides in some regions. These early settlements typically housed between 100 to 500 people, though some grew much larger over time. One of the most famous early villages is Hatayhoyk in modern-day Turkey, which existed around 7500 BCE. This remarkable site provides us with incredible insights into early village life. The houses were built right next to each other with no streets between them. People actually moved around on the rooftops and entered their homes through holes in the ceiling. Can you imagine living in such a place? The establishment of permanent settlements brought about numerous changes in how people lived and interacted. For the first time in human history, people had to figure out how to live in close proximity to many others for extended periods. This led to the development of social rules and customs that would help maintain peace and order within the community. Storage became increasingly important in these early villages. People needed ways to keep their harvested grain safe and dry, leading to the creation of storage containers and dedicated storage areas. This ability to store food surpluses was revolutionary. It meant that not everyone had to be involved in food production all the time. This surplus allowed some people to specialize in other skills, like pottery making, weaving, or tool making. The first villages also saw the emergence of new social structures. As communities grew larger, they needed ways to organize themselves and make decisions affecting everyone. This led to the development of leadership roles and the first simple forms of governance. However, these early villages were likely quite egalitarian, with decisions being made collectively by community members. One of the most fascinating aspects of early village life was the development of communal spaces and activities. Archaeological evidence shows that many early settlements had special areas for community gatherings, religious ceremonies, or shared activities like grain grinding. These spaces helped strengthen social bonds and create a sense of shared identity among village members. The establishment of permanent settlements also had profound effects on human health and demographics. Living in close quarters with others and with domesticated animals led to the spread of new diseases. However, the reliable food supply meant that women could have more children closer together, leading to population growth. Trade networks began to develop between villages as communities exchanged goods they had specialized in producing. This led to the spread of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices across wider regions. Evidence of shells from distant coasts, obsidian from far-off mountains, and pottery styles from other regions shows how these early villages were connected through trade. The first villages represented more than just a change in where people lived. They marked the beginning of a new way of life that would eventually lead to the development of cities, states, and civilizations. They were the laboratories where humans first experimented with agriculture, animal domestication, craft specialization, and complex social organization. What's particularly remarkable is that this transition to village life happened independently in different parts of the world. While the specific timing and circumstances varied, communities across the globe gradually discovered the advantages of permanent settlement. This parallel development suggests that village life was a natural step in human social evolution once the right conditions were in place. The legacy of these first villages continues to influence us today. Many of the basic elements of human society, from how we organize our living spaces to how we make collective decisions, have their roots in these early experiments in community living. When we look at modern cities and towns, we're seeing the culmination of a process that began with those first brave groups who decided to put down roots and build permanent homes. As we continue our journey through human history, we arrive at a fascinating period when our ancestors became true masters of stone toolmaking, particularly with flint. Have you ever wondered how ancient humans managed to create such precise and effective tools from simple rocks? Let's explore this remarkable chapter in human innovation. Flint, a naturally occurring form of microcrystalline quartz, became the cornerstone of ancient tool-making technology. What made flint so special? When struck correctly, it breaks in a predictable way, creating sharp edges perfect for cutting and scraping. This property, called conchoidal fracture, allowed our ancestors to develop increasingly sophisticated tools. The mastery of flint working emerged around 40,000 to 12,000 years ago during what archaeologists call the Upper Paleolithic period. During this time, humans developed a technique called pressure flaking. Unlike earlier methods of simply hitting one stone against another, pressure flaking involved using bone or antler tools to carefully press off small flakes from the edge of a stone. This precise control resulted in much finer tools than ever before. One of the most significant innovations was the blade technology. Instead of creating tools by chipping away at a coarse stone, skilled craftspeople learned to strike off long, parallel-sided blades. From a single prepared core, they could produce multiple standardized blades. Think about the efficiency of this process. It's similar to slicing bread, where each cut produces a uniform piece. These blades could then be further worked into various specialized tools. The range of tools expanded dramatically during this period. Let's look at some of the main types. 1. Burins, chisel-like tools used for working bone and antler. 2. Scrapers, for preparing animal hides. 3. Projectile points, for hunting. 4. Microliths, tiny stone tools that could be hafted onto wooden handles. 5. Drills, for making holes in other materials. But perhaps more fascinating than the tools themselves was the emergence of specialized craftspeople. For the first time in human history, we see evidence of individuals who dedicated significant time to perfecting their tool-making skills. These ancient artisans developed techniques that required years of practice to master. How do we know this? The archaeological evidence shows consistently high-quality tools that could only have been produced by experienced hands. Trading networks began to develop around these skilled crafters and their products. Not all areas had good quality flint deposits, so communities without access to this valuable resource would trade with those who did. This led to the establishment of regular trade routes, some spanning hundreds of kilometers. Archaeologists can trace these ancient trade networks by studying the chemical composition of flint tools and matching them to their source quarries. The impact of this advanced tool-making extended far beyond just having better implements. It fundamentally changed how human societies operated. Communities began to organize themselves around skilled craftspeople, leading to early forms of specialization and division of labor. Some members of the group could focus on tool-making, while others concentrated on hunting, gathering, or other tasks. The knowledge of flint working was carefully passed down through generations. This transmission of specialized knowledge represents one of the earliest forms of formal teaching and learning in human society. Young apprentices would spend years learning from master craftspeople, gradually developing the skills needed to produce high-quality tools. Evidence of this mastery can be found in archaeological sites across Europe, Asia, and Africa. One particularly impressive example is the Solatrine culture of France and Spain, around 20,000 years ago, known for their exquisitely worked leaf-shaped spear points. These points were so thin and precisely made that modern experimental archaeologists struggle to replicate them with the same level of skill. The development of advanced flint working also had important social implications. The possession of finely made tools became a marker of status and identity. Different cultural groups developed their own distinctive styles of tool-making, which archaeologists can now use to track ancient population movements and cultural interactions. This period also saw the beginning of what we might call prehistoric industrial sites. Certain locations, particularly rich in high-quality flint, became major production centers. At these sites, archaeologists have found evidence of systematic quarrying and tool production on a scale that suggests organization beyond just meeting local needs. The mastery of flint working represents one of humanity's first steps toward technological sophistication. It demonstrates our ancestors' ability to understand and manipulate natural materials, to develop and perfect complex techniques, and to organize production and distribution systems. These developments laid crucial groundwork for later technological advances and the eventual emergence of metallurgy. The legacy of these ancient flint masters continues to influence us today. The principles of fracture mechanics they discovered through trial and error are now fundamental to modern materials science. Their trading networks established patterns of human interaction that would evolve into today's global trade systems. And their achievement reminds us that innovation and craftsmanship have been central to human progress since our earliest days. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors dealt with illness and injury before modern medicine? The story of ancient healing practices is a fascinating journey that connects us directly to our prehistoric roots, showing just how resourceful and observant our early ancestors were. Let's begin with the fundamental truth that prehistoric humans weren't simply stumbling around without any medical knowledge. Through careful observation and generations of trial and error, They developed sophisticated understanding of natural remedies and healing practices. Archaeological evidence from various sites around the world has revealed that early humans were using medicinal plants as far back as 60,000 years ago. One of the most significant discoveries about ancient medicine comes from dental plaque analysis of Neanderthal remains. These studies reveal traces of poplar bark, which contains salicylic acid, the active ingredient in modern aspirin. This wasn't a coincidence. They were deliberately choosing plants with pain-relieving properties. But how did they know which plants to use? The development of ancient medicine was deeply intertwined with careful observation of animal behavior. Early humans noticed that sick animals would seek out and consume specific plants. Through watching these natural behaviors, they began to build their pharmaceutical knowledge. For instance, they observed that wounded animals would roll in certain types of mud, leading to the discovery of clay's antiseptic properties. The role of shamans and early healers was crucial in prehistoric medicine. These individuals served as the first doctors, combining practical medical knowledge with spiritual practices. They were responsible for maintaining and passing down medical knowledge through generations. Archaeological evidence shows specialized tools and containers used for preparing medicines, indicating that healing was a dedicated practice requiring specific skills and knowledge. Early humans discovered that certain fungi had powerful medicinal properties. The most famous example is the birch polypore fungus found with Ötzi the Iceman, dated to around 3300 BCE. This fungus has both antibiotic and anti-parasitic properties, showing that prehistoric people had sophisticated knowledge of natural antibiotics long before modern medicine. The use of minerals in ancient medicine was also widespread. Ochre, a natural clay earth pigment, was used not just for cave paintings but also as an antiseptic powder for wounds. Red ochre, in particular, contains iron oxide, which has antimicrobial properties. This demonstrates how early humans found multiple uses for the materials available to them. But ancient medicine wasn't just about physical remedies. Archaeological evidence suggests that prehistoric humans practiced forms of surgery. Skulls showing signs of trepanation, the surgical drilling of holes in the skull, date back to 6500 BCE. Remarkably, many of these skulls show signs of healing, indicating that the patients survived these procedures. This reveals not just surgical skill, but also knowledge of post-operative care and infection prevention. The connection between physical and spiritual healing was fundamental in prehistoric medicine. Many healing practices involved rituals and ceremonies, which we now know can have real psychological benefits through the placebo effect. Cave paintings and artifacts suggest that early humans understood the connection between mental and physical well-being. Early humans also developed physical therapies. Evidence suggests they practiced forms of massage, bone setting, and heat therapy. Hot springs and mineral baths were likely used for healing, as indicated by archaeological remains found near such natural features. The preservation and preparation of medicines was another crucial aspect. Early humans developed methods to dry and store healing plants, created poultices and teas, and even developed primitive forms of fermentation to extract active compounds from plants. Clay pots and grinding stones found at archaeological sites often contain residues of medicinal plants. Trade played a vital role in ancient medicine. Certain healing substances were so valued that they were traded over vast distances. Amber, for instance, was traded across Europe not just for decoration, but for its believed healing properties. This shows that medical knowledge was shared and spread between different groups and regions. The legacy of ancient medicine continues today. Many modern pharmaceuticals are derived from plants that our ancestors used. For example, willow bark, which contains salicylic acid, led to the development of aspirin. The ancient practice of using molds to treat infections preceded the discovery of penicillin by thousands of years. What's particularly remarkable is how many of these ancient remedies have been validated by modern science. Studies have confirmed the medicinal properties of many plants and substances used in prehistoric times, showing that our ancestors' observational skills and medical knowledge were far more sophisticated than previously thought. This understanding of ancient medicine helps us appreciate the ingenuity of our ancestors and reminds us that the foundation of modern medicine rests on thousands of years of careful observation and practical experience. It also raises an intriguing question: what other ancient medical knowledge might we have lost over time that could still be valuable today? The story of ancient medicine is not just about treating illness, it's about human innovation, careful observation of nature, and the passing down of knowledge through generations. It shows us that the basic human drive to heal and care for each other has been a constant throughout our species' history. Let's dive into the fascinating world of early coastal communities and their remarkable development of fishing techniques. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors first learned to harvest the bounty of the seas? The story of fisher folk is one of human ingenuity, survival, and the profound connection between people and the ocean. The earliest fishing communities emerged along coastlines worldwide, wherever humans settled near water bodies. These communities developed specialized knowledge and skills passed down through generations, creating a rich cultural heritage centered around marine resources. But how did they begin? Archaeological evidence reveals that fishing practices date back at least 40,000 years. Early fisher folk started with simple hand-gathering techniques in shallow waters, collecting shellfish, crabs, and stranded fish. This basic method gradually evolved into more sophisticated approaches as communities gained better understanding of marine life patterns and behaviors. One of the most significant developments was the creation of fishing tools. Early communities crafted fish hooks from bones, shells, and wood. These hooks weren't just simple curved pieces, they were carefully designed with specific shapes and sizes to target different types of fish. The development of fishing lines made from plant fibers and animal sinews allowed these communities to catch fish in deeper waters. The invention of nets marked a revolutionary change in fishing practices. Early nets were made from woven plant fibers, and their design required extensive knowledge of both materials and engineering. These communities discovered that different mesh sizes would catch different types of fish, leading to specialized net designs for various species. But fishing wasn't just about the tools, it was about understanding the sea itself. Fisher folk developed intricate knowledge of tides, weather patterns, and seasonal fish migrations. They learned to read the ocean's moods, understanding when it was safe to venture out and when to stay ashore. This knowledge was vital for survival and successful fishing expeditions. The development of boats and watercraft was another crucial advancement. Starting with simple rafts made from bundled reeds or logs, fishing communities gradually developed more sophisticated vessel designs. These boats allowed them to venture further from shore and access richer fishing grounds. Preservation techniques were equally important as catching methods. How did these communities keep their catch fresh without modern refrigeration? They developed various preservation methods, including sun-drying fish on rocks or wooden racks, smoking fish using different types of wood, salt curing, especially in regions with access to salt deposits, fermentation techniques for certain types of seafood. These preservation methods not only prevented food spoilage, but also enabled trade with inland communities, establishing important economic networks that would shape early civilizations. The fisher folk didn't just focus on fish, they developed diverse harvesting techniques for different marine resources. Shellfish gathering became a specialized practice, with communities learning the best times and locations for collection. They developed tools for harvesting oysters, mussels, and clams, and understood the importance of sustainable harvesting to ensure future abundance. Fishing communities also developed complex social structures around their practices. Many created systems for sharing catches, maintaining equipment, and teaching younger generations. These social organizations often included rituals and ceremonies related to fishing success and safety at sea. The knowledge of seasonal patterns was crucial. Fisher folk learned to predict when certain species would be abundant and when to expect lean times. This understanding led to the development of fishing calendars that guided their activities throughout the year. They knew which fish would appear in which season, where they would be found, and the best methods to catch them. But perhaps most remarkably, these communities developed early conservation practices. They understood that overfishing could deplete their resources, so many communities established traditional rules about when and where to fish, which sizes to catch, and which areas to leave untouched to allow fish populations to regenerate. The impact of these early fishing communities extends far beyond their time. Many of their innovations continue to influence modern fishing practices. Their understanding of marine ecosystems, preservation techniques, and sustainable harvesting methods provides valuable lessons for contemporary fisheries management. The legacy of the fisher folk is also evident in coastal cultures worldwide. Many traditional fishing communities still maintain practices and knowledge passed down from ancient times. Their stories, songs, and traditions reflect the deep connection between humans and the sea that developed during these early periods. The development of fishing techniques represents one of humanity's most important technological and cultural achievements. It demonstrates how communities adapted to their environment, developed sophisticated technologies, and created sustainable practices that allowed them to thrive for generations. The story of the fisher folk is not just about catching fish, it's about human innovation, environmental awareness, and the creation of lasting cultural traditions that continue to influence our relationship with the ocean today. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors shared their stories before they had books, paper, or even a written language? The answer lies in the fascinating world of petroglyphs and rock art, one of humanity's earliest forms of communication and artistic expression. Let's explore these ancient galleries that have survived thousands of years, telling tales of those who came before us. Petroglyphs are images carved or pecked into rock surfaces, while pictographs are paintings made on rocks using natural pigments. Together, these forms of rock art represent some of the oldest surviving examples of human creativity and communication. But they're much more than just prehistoric doodles. They're windows into the lives, beliefs, and experiences of our ancestors. The creation of rock art dates back to at least 40,000 years ago, with some of the oldest known examples found in Indonesia and Europe. These ancient artists used various techniques to create their works. For petroglyphs, they would carefully chip away at rock surfaces using harder stones as tools, creating images by removing the darker, weathered surface to reveal lighter rock underneath. For pictographs, they mixed natural materials like ochre, hematite, and charcoal with animal fat or water to create durable paints that have lasted for millennia. What makes rock art particularly fascinating is its universal nature. Every inhabited continent contains examples of these ancient artworks, showing that the impulse to create and communicate through images is a fundamental human characteristic. From the caves of Lascaux in France to the vast galleries of the Sahara Desert, from Australian Aboriginal art to Native American petroglyphs, these works share surprising similarities despite being created by peoples separated by vast distances and time. But what stories do these ancient artworks tell? The subjects depicted in rock art are remarkably diverse. Many show animals that were important for hunting or held spiritual significance. Common motifs include deer, bison, horses, and in coastal areas, whales and fish. Human figures appear frequently, often engaged in hunting scenes or ritual dances. Abstract patterns and geometric shapes are also widespread, though their meanings often remain mysterious to modern observers. Some rock art panels serve as ancient maps or territorial markers showing water sources, migration routes, or boundaries between different groups. Others record astronomical observations or important celestial events. Many petroglyphs appear to document significant historical events or tell stories of creation and other spiritual beliefs that were central to ancient cultures. The placement of rock art was rarely random. Many sites were chosen for their acoustic properties, with some researchers suggesting that certain locations were selected because they produced echoes or unusual sounds that enhanced ritual experiences. Other sites appear to have been chosen for their visibility or proximity to important resources like water or hunting grounds. The preservation of these ancient artworks is nothing short of remarkable. Protected from the elements by overhanging cliffs or cave entrances, many petroglyphs and pictographs have survived thousands of years of exposure to weather and climate change. However, they faced modern threats from vandalism, development, and environmental factors accelerated by climate change. Understanding rock art requires careful observation and cultural context. While some images might seem straightforward to interpret, many carry meanings that were specific to the cultures that created them. Archaeologists work closely with indigenous communities whose oral traditions often provide crucial insights into the significance of these ancient works. The study of rock art has revealed fascinating details about ancient life. For instance, changes in the animals depicted can help track climate change over thousands of years as species appeared or disappeared from particular regions. The sophistication of the artwork itself provides clues about technological development and social organization in prehistoric societies. Modern technology is revolutionizing how we study rock art. Digital imaging techniques can reveal details invisible to the naked eye, while 3D scanning creates precise records of sites for future study and preservation. Some faded pictographs, nearly invisible today, can be made visible again through digital enhancement, revealing lost details of ancient artworks. Rock art continues to influence contemporary culture and art. Many modern artists draw inspiration from these ancient works, creating new interpretations of prehistoric styles and techniques. The simplicity and power of petroglyphs and pictographs resonate across time, reminding us of our shared human heritage and our enduring need to leave our mark on the world. These ancient galleries serve as a reminder that art and the desire to communicate are fundamental aspects of human nature. They connect us directly to our ancestors, allowing us to share, across vast spans of time, in their observations of the world and their efforts to make sense of their existence. As we face modern challenges in preserving these irreplaceable treasures, we must remember that they represent not just art, but the dawn of human visual communication and storytelling. What stories might future generations read in the marks we leave behind? How will they interpret our own attempts to communicate across time? These questions echo those we ask ourselves as we study the art in stone left by our ancestors, forming a continuous thread of human expression that stretches from the distant past into the unknown future. The mastery of fire stands as one of humanity's most transformative achievements, marking a pivotal moment in our evolutionary journey. But have you ever wondered how our ancestors first learned to control and harness this powerful element? Let's explore the fascinating story of how humans became the keepers of fire and how this mastery changed everything. The journey begins roughly 1.5 million years ago when our early ancestors first began to use fire regularly. Initially, they likely collected naturally occurring fire from lightning strikes or volcanic activity. Can you imagine the mix of fear and curiosity they must have felt when encountering these natural flames? Early humans would have noticed how wildfire made certain foods more palatable and how it kept dangerous predators at bay. The real breakthrough came when humans learned to maintain and create fire themselves. This wasn't a simple overnight discovery. It took thousands of generations to develop and perfect these skills. The earliest evidence of controlled fire use comes from caves in South Africa, dating back about 1 million years. These ancient firekeepers developed two main methods of firemaking that would be used for millennia to come. The first method was friction-based fire starting. This involved rapidly rotating a wooden stick, called a drill, against a softer piece of wood, called a hearth, creating enough heat through friction to ignite small dry tinder. The second method used percussion, striking certain types of stones like pyrite against flint to create sparks. Both techniques required extensive knowledge of materials and considerable skill to execute successfully. But why was fire so revolutionary? The answers lie in its multiple uses that transformed human existence. Cooking revolutionized our diet. When food is cooked, it becomes easier to digest, allowing our bodies to extract more nutrients with less effort. This had profound effects on human evolution, particularly brain development. Cooking also made previously inedible or dangerous foods safe to eat, greatly expanding our dietary options. Have you noticed how cooking certain foods brings out their natural sweetness? This is the same chemical reaction our ancestors discovered. Fire provided warmth and light, extending human activity into the evening hours and allowing expansion into colder regions. Think about how this simple ability to stay warm fundamentally changed where humans could live and thrive. It enabled our species to migrate out of Africa and adapt to various climates across the globe. Protection from predators became much more effective with fire. Large carnivores naturally fear fire, and a well-maintained campfire would have created a safe zone for early human groups. This security allowed for better sleep and reduced the constant stress of predator awareness. Tool-making capabilities expanded dramatically with fire. The ability to harden wooden spears in fire made them more effective hunting weapons. Later, fire became crucial in working with materials like clay for pottery and various metals for tools and weapons. This technological advancement was so significant that entire ages of human development are named after the metals we learned to work with, the Bronze Age and Iron Age. Fire also became central to social and cultural development. The hearth became a gathering place, promoting social bonding and the sharing of stories and knowledge. This social aspect of fire use shouldn't be underestimated. It likely played a crucial role in the development of language and cultural transmission. The role of firekeepers in early societies was incredibly important. These individuals needed to maintain the flame continuously, as creating new fires was difficult and time-consuming. Special techniques were developed to carry fire during migrations, using slow-burning materials like certain fungi or compressed plant materials. Can you imagine the responsibility of being tasked with keeping the community's fire alive? The skills of firekeeping were carefully passed down through generations, often with specific rituals and ceremonies marking the transmission of this knowledge. Fire became not just a tool but a sacred element in many cultures, represented in countless myths and religious practices worldwide. The impact of fire mastery continues to influence our lives today. Every time we cook a meal, light a candle, or warm ourselves by a fireplace, we're connecting with this ancient legacy. The same principles our ancestors discovered are still at work in modern technology, from the internal combustion engine to industrial furnaces. Understanding how fire was mastered helps us appreciate the ingenuity of our ancestors and the cumulative nature of human knowledge. Each generation built upon the discoveries of those who came before, gradually expanding our capabilities and understanding. This process continues today as we face new challenges requiring innovative solutions. The story of fire mastery reminds us that some of humanity's most important achievements came not from sudden breakthroughs, but from careful observation, experimentation, and the passing down of knowledge through generations. What seemed like magic to our earliest ancestors became understood, controlled, and eventually mastered, transforming human society forever. Have you ever wondered how our ancient ancestors dealt with death? The story of human burial customs is one of the most fascinating chapters in our history, revealing not just how we handled death, but how we understood life itself. Let's explore the remarkable journey of early funeral practices and what they tell us about our ancestors' beliefs. The practice of intentional burial first emerged during the Middle Paleolithic period, roughly 100,000 years ago. This wasn't just about disposing of the dead, it marked a profound shift in human consciousness. For the first time in history, our ancestors were showing clear signs of thinking about what happens after death. What makes these early burials so significant? The key lies in the deliberate nature of these practices. When our ancestors began to carefully place their dead in specific locations, often in a fetal position, they demonstrated an understanding that death deserved special treatment. This wasn't random behavior, it was planned, purposeful, and laden with meaning. The earliest confirmed human burial was discovered in Clovis cave in Israel, dating back approximately 100,000 years. Here's what makes this discovery so remarkable. The bodies were found with red ochre, a natural earth pigment, suggesting ritual significance. Think about it, why would our ancestors take the time to add this special material if they didn't attach some deeper meaning to death? But burial practices weren't uniform across different groups. Some communities chose to bury their dead in caves, while others created specific burial grounds. In some cases, bodies were placed in shallow graves with their personal belongings, tools, weapons, and ornaments they used in life. What do you think these grave goods tell us about their beliefs about the afterlife? The position of the body in early burials often carried special significance. Many bodies were found in a fetal position, suggesting a belief in death as a transition to rebirth. Others were oriented toward specific directions, perhaps indicating early astronomical or spiritual beliefs. Some were even buried with their families or clan members, showing the importance of social bonds even in death. One of the most intriguing aspects of early burial customs was the use of grave markers. While these weren't the elaborate headstones we know today, they were nevertheless significant. Large stones, wooden posts, or other natural materials were used to mark burial sites. This practice suggests that our ancestors wanted to remember and perhaps revisit their dead. But why? What compelled them to maintain this connection with the deceased? The development of burial customs also tells us about early spiritual beliefs. When people began burying their dead with food, weapons, and personal items, it suggested a belief in an afterlife where these items would be needed. Some burials included shells, decorated bones, and other ornamental items, indicating that aesthetic and symbolic thinking was already well developed. Evidence shows that special treatment was often given to certain individuals in death. Some burials were more elaborate than others, with more grave goods or special positioning, suggesting early social hierarchies. Children and infants were often buried with particular care, sometimes with ochre or shell beads, indicating their special status within the community. These early burial practices had practical aspects too. Burying the dead helped protect living areas from predators and disease. But the care and effort put into these burials went far beyond mere practical considerations. The inclusion of flowers, found in some Neanderthal burials, the careful positioning of bodies, and the inclusion of grave goods all point to complex emotional and spiritual motivations. The study of early burial customs has revealed something remarkable about our ancestors. They were capable of abstract thought and symbolic behavior much earlier than previously believed. The fact that they developed specific ways to handle death shows they could think about concepts beyond immediate survival needs. They could contemplate mortality, consider what might happen after death, and create rituals to help them cope with loss. These burial practices also tell us about the social organization of early human groups. The effort required to dig graves and prepare bodies suggests community involvement. The presence of grave goods indicates systems of ownership and value. The special treatment of certain individuals hints at social structure and hierarchy. What's particularly fascinating is how these early burial customs influenced later religious and spiritual beliefs. Many modern funeral practices can trace their roots back to these ancient beginnings. The concept of preparing the dead for an afterlife, marking burial places, and including personal possessions with the deceased, all these practices began with our early ancestors. As we look back at these ancient burial customs, we must ask ourselves, how much have we really changed? While our methods may be more sophisticated, aren't we still grappling with the same fundamental questions about death and what lies beyond? Don't we still seek ways to honor our dead and maintain connections with them? The story of early burial customs is more than just a historical account, it's a window into the development of human consciousness itself. It shows us when and how we began to think symbolically, to consider the abstract, and to create ritual responses to life's greatest mystery, death. These practices marked a crucial step in our journey from purely instinctual beings to creatures capable of complex thought and spiritual belief. Throughout human history, shells have played a fascinating and vital role in the development of coastal communities worldwide. Let's explore how these remarkable natural objects transformed from simple beach findings into essential tools, treasured decorations, and even currency that shaped ancient civilizations. Have you ever picked up a shell on the beach and wondered about its potential uses? Our ancestors did exactly that, but they took it several steps further. The practice of shell collecting dates back to the earliest human settlements along coastlines, where communities discovered the versatility of these natural resources. The systematic collection of shells began as early as 100,000 years ago. Archaeological evidence shows that coastal dwelling communities would gather various types of shells during low tide, carefully selecting them based on their size, shape, and durability. But why were shells so important to these early communities? First and foremost, shells served as practical tools. Large bivalve shells, like those from clams and oysters, became natural bowls and containers. Their sturdy structure made them perfect for holding water, gathering food, and even cooking. Some communities would use shells as scraping tools, utilizing their sharp edges to process food or clean animal hides. Imagine preparing your daily meals using nothing but shells. This was the reality for many coastal peoples. The practical applications of shells extended far beyond simple containers. Coastal communities discovered that certain shells could be modified into effective cutting tools. By carefully breaking shells in specific ways, they could create sharp edges that rivaled stone tools. This discovery was particularly important in regions where suitable stone for tool-making was scarce. But shells weren't just practical tools, they also served important cultural and decorative purposes. Have you ever considered why humans are naturally drawn to collecting beautiful shells? This attraction appears to be ancient and universal. Archaeological sites worldwide have revealed elaborate shell decorations, jewelry, and ceremonial objects dating back thousands of years. The use of shells as personal adornments represents one of the earliest forms of human self-expression. Communities would carefully drill holes in shells to create necklaces, bracelets, and other decorative items. These weren't just for beauty, they often indicated social status, tribal affiliation, or religious significance. Some shells were so prized that they would be traded across vast distances, creating some of the earliest known trade networks. One of the most remarkable aspects of shell collecting was its role in the development of early economic systems. Certain shells, particularly the cowrie shell, became one of the first forms of currency used by humans. These small, durable shells were ideal for trade because they were relatively rare, difficult to counterfeit, and easily transportable. The cowrie shell currency system was so effective that it remained in use in some parts of the world until the early 20th century. The process of shell collection itself was a sophisticated endeavor. Communities developed specific techniques for gathering different types of shells, often passing this knowledge down through generations. They learned which seasons were best for collecting, which areas yielded the highest quality shells, and how to properly clean and prepare shells for various uses. The environmental knowledge required for successful shell collecting was extensive. Communities needed to understand tidal patterns, weather conditions, and the life cycles of various shellfish. This knowledge wasn't just practical, it formed an important part of their cultural heritage and their understanding of the natural world. Shell collecting also led to the development of specialized tools and techniques for shell processing. Communities created specific tools for breaking shells in controlled ways, drilling holes for decoration, and polishing shells to enhance their natural beauty. These skills required considerable expertise and were often passed down through family lines. The impact of shell collecting extended to spiritual and religious practices as well. Many coastal communities believed that certain shells had spiritual properties or represented connections to their deities. Shells were often included in religious ceremonies, burial practices, and other important rituals. Some shells were considered so sacred that they were only handled by religious leaders or used exclusively in spiritual ceremonies. The legacy of these early shell collectors continues to influence modern society. Many of the decorative uses of shells that we see today, in jewelry, art, and architecture, can be traced back to these ancient practices. The scientific study of shells, conchology, has its roots in these early collection practices, and many modern conservation efforts focus on protecting the marine environments that produce these valuable natural resources. Understanding the importance of shell collecting in human history helps us appreciate the ingenuity of our ancestors and their ability to utilize natural resources in sustainable ways. It also reminds us of the deep connection between human communities and their coastal environments, a relationship that continues to be vital in many parts of the world today. What can we learn from these ancient shell collectors? Perhaps their most important lesson is the value of understanding and respecting natural resources, using them wisely while ensuring their preservation for future generations. As we face modern environmental challenges, these lessons from our ancestors become increasingly relevant and important. Let's explore one of the most fascinating aspects of human evolution, how our ancestors first began to clothe themselves. Have you ever wondered what made early humans start wearing clothes, or what their first fashion choices looked like? The story of Stone Age fashion is not just about covering up, it's a tale of survival, innovation, and the dawn of human creativity. The earliest evidence of clothing dates back approximately 100,000 to 500,000 years ago. Our ancestors didn't have the luxury of walking into a store to buy their outfits. Instead, they had to rely on what nature provided: animal hides and plant fibers. But why did they start wearing clothes in the first place? The primary reason was protection, both from harsh weather conditions and from environmental hazards. Animal hides were the most commonly used material for Stone Age clothing. After hunting animals for food, early humans learned to make use of every part of their prey, including the skin. The process of turning raw animal hide into wearable leather was complex and time-consuming. First, the hide had to be scraped clean of all flesh and fat using stone tools. Then it needed to be treated to prevent rotting, a process called tanning. Archaeological evidence shows that early humans used various tanning methods, including smoking the hides and treating them with animal brains, which contain natural chemicals that help preserve the leather. But how did they put these pieces together? Without metal needles, Stone Age people had to be creative. They used sharp bone splinters as needles and animal sinews, tough strips of animal tissue as thread. These tools allowed them to punch holes in the leather and sew pieces together to create simple garments. The discovery of bone needles from this period, some as old as 40,000 years, shows just how ingenious our ancestors were. Plant fibers also played a crucial role in Stone Age fashion. Evidence suggests that humans learned to twist plant fibers together to create string and rope as early as 30,000 years ago. They used materials like nettle, hemp, and tree bark, which could be processed into flexible fibers. These plant-based materials were particularly important in warmer climates where full animal hide clothing would have been too hot to wear. What did these early garments look like? Archaeological evidence and studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies give us some clues. The simplest form was probably a wrap or cape made from a single animal hide. As sewing techniques developed, more complex garments emerged. These included simple tunics, leggings, and foot coverings. In colder regions, people would layer multiple garments for better insulation. The development of clothing had far-reaching implications for human society. It allowed our ancestors to migrate into colder climates, expanding the habitable range of our species. But clothing wasn't just about survival. It also became one of the earliest forms of self-expression and social signaling. Different groups likely developed their own distinct styles and techniques, marking the beginning of cultural identity through dress. Evidence suggests that Stone Age people also decorated their clothing. They used natural pigments to color leather and plant-based textiles. Archaeologists have found clothing ornaments made from shells, animal teeth, and bone beads dating back to this period. These decorative elements weren't just for aesthetics, they often carried social meaning, indicating status, group membership, or personal achievements. The skills involved in making clothes also led to other technological advances. The same techniques used to work leather and plant fibers were applied to making containers, shelters, and tools. The ability to sew and weave became fundamental technologies that human societies built upon for thousands of years. The impact of Stone Age fashion continues to influence us today. Many of the basic principles of clothing construction, from seaming to layering, were established during this period. The natural materials they used are seeing a revival in modern sustainable fashion, and the basic human desire to use clothing as both protection and expression remains unchanged. What's particularly remarkable about Stone Age fashion is how it demonstrates the ingenuity of early humans. Without any written instructions or formal training, they developed complex processes for creating durable, functional clothing from raw materials. They learned through observation and experimentation, passing their knowledge down through generations. Understanding Stone Age fashion helps us appreciate how far we've come in terms of technological development, while also reminding us of our species' remarkable ability to adapt and innovate. The next time you put on your clothes, remember that you're participating in a tradition that stretches back hundreds of thousands of years to when our ancestors first figured out how to turn animal hides and plant fibers into protection from the elements. Have you ever wondered who planted the first seed with the intention of growing food? The story of the first farmers marks one of humanity's most significant transformations, fundamentally changing how our species lived and interacted with the environment around 12,000 years ago. The transition from hunting and gathering to farming, known as the Neolithic Revolution, didn't happen overnight. It began independently in several regions across the globe, with the Fertile Crescent, modern-day Middle East, being one of the earliest. Here, wild wheat and barley grew naturally, and early humans noticed that dropped seeds would sprout and grow into new plants. The first steps toward agriculture were remarkably simple but revolutionary. People began to recognize that seeds from plants they ate could be deliberately planted and harvested later. This discovery led to the first instances of crop domestication, where humans selected and replanted seeds from plants with desirable characteristics, larger grains, stronger stems, or better taste. The earliest domesticated crops included wheat and barley in the Fertile Crescent, rice in East Asia, corn, maize in Mesoamerica, potatoes in the Andes, millet and sorghum in Africa. But why do humans start farming in the first place? The end of the last ice age brought climate changes that affected the availability of wild food sources. As populations grew, people needed more reliable food sources. Farming provided a solution, though it required more work than hunting and gathering. The development of basic agricultural tools accompanied this transition. Early farmers used digging sticks to break up soil, stone hoes for cultivation, grinding stones for processing grains, baskets and pottery for storing harvests. The first farming communities faced numerous challenges. They had to learn optimal planting times, understand weather patterns, develop methods to store food, protect crops from animals and other humans, deal with crop failures and diseases. This new way of life led to profound social changes. For the first time in human history, people settled in permanent locations. They built more substantial shelters and developed the concept of land ownership. Communities grew larger as farming could support more people in a given area than hunting and gathering. The first farmers also began domesticating animals. This process started with dogs, which were already human companions, and expanded to include sheep and goats, cattle, pigs, chickens. These animals provided not only meat but also milk and dairy products, wool and leather, manure for fertilizing crops, labor for plowing and transportation. The development of farming had far-reaching consequences for human health and society. More reliable food supply, population growth, development of permanent settlements, creation of food surpluses, emergence of social hierarchies, specialization of labor. However, early agriculture also brought new challenges: increased risk of crop failure, dependence on fewer food sources, new diseases from close contact with animals, more labor-intensive lifestyle, social inequality based on food surplus control. The knowledge and techniques of early farming spread gradually through migration of farming communities, trade between different groups, cultural exchange, adaptation to new environments. The first farmers also developed methods for soil preparation, irrigation, crop rotation, seed selection, food storage, pest control. These innovations laid the groundwork for modern agriculture. Many of the crops first domesticated by these ancient farmers remain staple foods today. The methods they developed through trial and error still influence current farming practices. The impact of this agricultural revolution continues to shape our world. Most of our food comes from domesticated crops. Modern cities exist because of agricultural surplus. Social structures still reflect agricultural origins. Land ownership remains a fundamental concept. Food storage and preservation remain crucial. The story of the first farmers represents humanity's first major step toward controlling our food supply rather than simply gathering what nature provided. This transition required not only new technical skills, but also new ways of thinking about time, planning, and community organization. The legacy of these first farmers lives on in the crops we grow, the animals we raise, the ways we organize our communities, our relationship with the land, our agricultural knowledge and practices. Understanding this pivotal moment in human history helps us appreciate both how far we've come and the foundations upon which our modern food systems are built. The first farmers' innovations and discoveries continue to influence how we feed ourselves today, making their story not just ancient history, but a living legacy that connects us to our agricultural origins. As our early farming ancestors began to rely more heavily on agriculture for survival, they quickly realized that success wasn't just about planting seeds and waiting. They needed to become keen observers of something that could make or break their harvests, the weather. Had you ever wondered how ancient people learned to predict weather patterns without modern technology? Let's explore how our ancestors became the first weather watchers, developing a crucial understanding that would shape human civilization. Following the emergence of early agriculture around 12,000 years ago, people began noticing patterns in nature that directly affected their crops. This wasn't just casual observation, their survival depended on it. The first weather watchers started by noting basic but essential patterns. They observed that certain events in nature repeated themselves year after year. For instance, they noticed that particular birds would appear just before the rainy season, or specific flowers would bloom when the weather was about to warm up. These observations weren't random. They were carefully documented through oral traditions and later through basic record keeping. One of the most important discoveries was the correlation between celestial bodies and seasonal changes. Early farmers noticed that the sun's position in the sky followed a predictable pattern throughout the year. They observed that when the sun reached certain positions, it usually meant specific weather conditions would follow. This understanding led to the creation of the first seasonal calendars, which were crucial for agricultural planning. The moon's phases also played a significant role in early weather watching. People noticed that certain weather patterns often coincided with particular moon phases. While not all of these correlations were scientifically accurate, many observations helped them prepare for changing weather conditions. Rivers and water bodies became natural weather indicators. Annual flooding patterns, like those of the Nile River, became reliable markers for seasonal changes. Communities learned that these floods would bring fertile soil for farming, leading them to time their planting accordingly. But how did they share this knowledge with future generations? The answer lies in the development of weather lore, practical wisdom passed down through generations. These weren't just stories, they were valuable collections of observed patterns that helped communities prepare for weather changes. Many of these observations were surprisingly accurate, based on generations of careful monitoring and experience. Cloud patterns became another crucial area of study. Early weather watchers learned to recognize different cloud formations and what they might mean for immediate weather conditions. They noticed that certain cloud shapes often preceded rain, while others suggested fair weather was approaching. Wind patterns were equally important. Communities learned that winds from certain directions typically brought different weather conditions. They began to understand that wind direction changes often signaled incoming weather changes, leading to the development of basic wind monitoring techniques. Animal behavior became a reliable weather indicator. People noticed that many animals changed their behavior before weather events, birds flying lower before storms, ants building up their mounds before rain, or livestock becoming restless before severe weather. These observations became part of their weather prediction toolkit. The development of seasonal understanding had profound effects on early agricultural societies. It allowed them to plan planting and harvesting times more effectively, prepare for adverse weather conditions, store food for periods when farming wasn't possible, develop trading systems based on seasonal surpluses. This weather watching wasn't limited to farming communities. Coastal peoples developed sophisticated understanding of tides and storm patterns, crucial for fishing and maritime navigation. Mountain communities learned to predict dangerous weather conditions that could affect their safety and livestock. The knowledge gained through weather watching led to the development of the first permanent settlements. Understanding weather patterns meant people could better plan for the future, leading to more stable communities and the growth of early civilizations. As these weather watching skills developed, different regions created their own unique systems of weather prediction. These systems were based on local conditions and patterns, showing how adaptable and observant our ancestors were. Some of these traditional weather watching methods are still used today in various parts of the world. Perhaps most importantly, this early weather watching laid the groundwork for modern meteorology. While today's weather forecasting relies on sophisticated technology and scientific understanding, it began with these first careful observers who recognized the patterns in nature around them. The legacy of these early weather watchers continues to influence how we understand and predict weather today. Their basic observations about cloud formations, wind patterns, and seasonal changes remain fundamentally sound, even as we've added layers of scientific understanding and technological capability. What started as a survival necessity became one of humanity's first scientific endeavors. These early weather watchers didn't just help their communities survive, they began humanity's long journey toward understanding the natural world through careful observation and pattern recognition. Their work reminds us that some of the most important scientific discoveries begin with simply paying attention to the world around us. Let's embark on a fascinating journey through the development of early trading networks that shaped human civilization. Have you ever wondered how ancient peoples managed to exchange goods across vast distances, long before the existence of modern transportation and communication systems? The story of trade routes is a testament to human ingenuity and the fundamental desire to connect with others. Trade routes emerged as communities began to realize that they couldn't produce everything they needed on their own. Think about it, some regions had abundant clay for pottery but lacked good stone for tools, while others had plenty of obsidian but no salt. This basic need for resources sparked the beginning of what would become complex trading networks. The earliest trade routes were likely simple paths between neighboring settlements. People would walk these paths regularly, carrying goods to exchange with their neighbors. Over time, these small-scale exchanges grew into larger networks as communities discovered the benefits of trading with groups farther away. But how did they manage to establish these routes? Water routes played a crucial role in early trade. Rivers, lakes, and coastal areas became natural highways for commerce. The first traders used simple rafts and boats to transport goods along these waterways, finding it much easier to move heavy items by water than by land. Major rivers like the Nile, Tigris, Euphrates, Indus, and Yellow River became the backbones of early trading networks. Land routes developed alongside water routes, often connecting river systems or linking inland communities with coastal trading posts. These paths followed natural features like valleys and mountain passes, making travel easier and more predictable. Traders would learn to recognize landmarks and share knowledge about safe passages, water sources, and potential dangers along the way. But what exactly did these early traders exchange? The items varied greatly depending on the region and time period, but some common trade goods included: 1. Essential materials like salt, flint, and obsidian. 2. Metals such as copper, tin, and later iron. 3. Precious stones and shells for decoration. 4. Pottery and tools. 5. Textiles and animal products. 6. Spices and exotic foods. The development of trade routes led to several important innovations. For example, communities needed ways to track exchanges, leading to the development of early recording systems and eventually writing. They also needed to agree on the value of goods, which led to the creation of standardized measurements and early forms of currency. Trading centers began to emerge at strategic points along these routes. These could be at river crossings, natural harbors, or the intersection of multiple paths. Many of these trading centers eventually grew into cities as people settled permanently to facilitate trade and provide services to travelers. The exchange of goods wasn't the only significant aspect of these trade routes. They also served as channels for the exchange of ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. When traders met, they shared stories, techniques, and knowledge from their home regions. This cultural exchange was just as valuable as the material goods being traded. Safety was a major concern for early traders. How did they protect themselves and their valuable cargo? They often traveled in groups, forming caravans for protection against both natural hazards and hostile groups. These caravans would later become a defining feature of famous trade routes like the Silk Road. The establishment of trade routes required cooperation between different communities. Groups had to agree on safe passage, establish common meeting points, and develop basic rules for exchanges. This led to the development of early diplomatic relations and cross-cultural understanding. Trade routes also influenced the development of language. As traders needed to communicate with people from different regions, they developed common trading languages or pidgins. Some words we use today can be traced back to these early trading interactions. The impact of these early trade routes continues to influence us today. Many modern transportation routes follow the same paths established by ancient traders. Cities that were once trading posts remain important commercial centers. The principles of supply and demand that governed early trade still form the basis of our economic systems. Understanding these early trade routes helps us appreciate how interconnected human societies have always been. Even in ancient times, people recognized the value of reaching out beyond their immediate surroundings to access resources and ideas they couldn't find at home. These networks laid the groundwork for the global trading system we have today. The story of trade routes reminds us that commerce has always been about more than just exchanging goods. It's about building connections between different peoples and cultures. As we continue to develop new ways of trading and connecting in our modern world, we're building upon a foundation that was laid thousands of years ago by these early traders. What started as simple paths between neighboring villages eventually grew into complex networks that spanned continents. These trade routes became the arteries of ancient civilizations, pumping life-giving resources and ideas across vast distances and shaping the course of human history in ways that continue to influence our world today. Let's explore one of humanity's most remarkable achievements, our first attempts at creating shelters and buildings. Have you ever wondered where our ancestors first called home? How did they progress from natural caves to constructed dwellings? The story of Stone Age architecture is a testament to human ingenuity and adaptation. The earliest human shelters weren't actually built at all, they were natural caves and rock overhangs. These ready-made shelters provided protection from the elements and predators, requiring no construction skills. However, as human populations grew and spread across different environments, the need for constructed shelters became essential. The earliest constructed shelters appeared during the Paleolithic period, roughly 400,000 years ago. These primitive structures were made from materials that were readily available in the environment. In areas with abundant trees, wooden frames were created using branches and logs. In colder regions where wood was scarce, our ancestors used mammoth bones as building materials, a fascinating example of human adaptability. These bones were arranged in circular patterns and covered with animal hides to create dome-shaped structures. But what about the tools they used? Stone Age builders worked with what we might consider very basic implements: stone axes for cutting wood, bone tools for working with animal hides, and stone scrapers for preparing building materials. Despite these simple tools, they achieved remarkable results. One of the most significant developments in Stone Age architecture came during the transition to the Neolithic period, around 10,000 BCE. This period marked humanity's shift from nomadic hunting and gathering to settled farming communities. With this change came the need for more permanent structures. Can you imagine the challenge of building something meant to last for years rather than just a seasonal shelter? The first permanent houses were typically circular or rectangular pit houses. These structures were partially dug into the ground, providing natural insulation. The walls were built using a technique called wattle and daub, a framework of wooden stakes, wattle, covered with a mixture of clay, straw, and animal dung daub. This method was remarkably effective and continued to be used in some parts of the world well into the modern era. As communities grew larger, Stone Age architects began experimenting with more complex structures. One of the most impressive achievements was the development of communal buildings. These larger structures served as meeting places, storage facilities, and sometimes religious centers. The remains of these buildings provide valuable insights into early social organization and community life. Stone Age builders also demonstrated an impressive understanding of environmental adaptation. In hot climates, they created structures with thick walls to keep interiors cool. In wet areas, they built houses on stilts to protect from flooding and ground moisture. In cold regions, they developed semi-subterranean houses that took advantage of the Earth's natural insulation. The use of stone as a building material marked another crucial development. While early structures primarily used wood and other perishable materials, the introduction of stone construction represented a significant technological advance. This required new skills and tools, including methods for quarrying, moving, and placing heavy stones. One of the most remarkable aspects of Stone Age architecture was the development of astronomical alignments in some structures. Buildings were oriented to capture specific sunlight angles during solstices or other significant celestial events. This shows that our ancestors not only built for practical purposes, but also incorporated their understanding of the natural world into their architecture. The evolution of Stone Age architecture also reflects the development of social complexity. As societies became more organized, buildings began to reflect social hierarchies. Larger, more elaborate structures often belonged to community leaders or served special communal purposes. This architectural differentiation provides evidence of early social stratification. Storage facilities represent another important architectural development. As agriculture became established, communities needed ways to store surplus food. This led to the construction of specialized structures designed to protect grain and other foodstuffs from moisture, pests, and theft. The legacy of Stone Age architecture continues to influence construction methods today. The basic principles of shelter construction, the need for sturdy foundations, weather-resistant walls, and effective roofing remain unchanged. Many traditional building techniques, such as the use of natural insulation and passive solar heating, have their roots in Stone Age innovations. What makes Stone Age architecture particularly impressive is that it was achieved through observation, trial and error, and the passing down of knowledge through generations. Without written plans or formal engineering training, our ancestors developed sophisticated building techniques that formed the foundation of all subsequent architectural development. Looking at Stone Age architecture helps us understand not just how our ancestors lived, but how they thought and solved problems. Each architectural advance represented a solution to a specific challenge, whether it was protection from the elements, the need for storage, or the desire to create communal spaces. These solutions demonstrate the remarkable ingenuity of our Stone Age ancestors and their ability to adapt to and modify their environment. Water, the essence of life itself. Throughout human history, our ancestors' survival depended on their ability to find, collect, and preserve this precious resource. Let's explore how early humans developed ingenious methods to secure water across different environments and climates. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors knew where to find water? They developed remarkable skills in reading the landscape and understanding natural indicators. Early humans learned that certain plants, animals, and geological features could lead them to water sources. For instance, they discovered that deep-rooted trees like willows and cottonwoods typically grow near underground water sources. They observed that the presence of birds, especially in the early morning or late afternoon, often indicated nearby water sources as birds need to drink regularly. One of the most fundamental skills developed by early water seekers was the ability to locate groundwater. They learned that water often collected in natural depressions, at the base of hills, and in valleys where the water table was closer to the surface. By digging wells in these locations, they could access underground water sources. This knowledge was passed down through generations and became crucial for establishing permanent settlements. But finding water was only part of the challenge. How did they preserve it? Early humans developed various methods to collect and store water for periods of scarcity. In arid regions, they created systems to harvest rainwater. They would dig channels and build basic catchment areas to direct and collect rainwater when it did fall. Large natural depressions in rocks, known as rock tanks or mammoths, were used as natural reservoirs. These natural formations were often enhanced by early humans who would deepen them or create channels to direct more water into them. In coastal regions, early humans learned to dig wells just above the high tide mark, where fresh water could be found floating above the denser saltwater. This understanding of water dynamics showed remarkable observation skills and practical knowledge. They also learned to dig wells in dry riverbeds, where water often continued to flow beneath the surface. The preservation of water became increasingly sophisticated as societies developed. Early storage methods included using animal skins and bladders as water containers. Later, they began creating pottery specifically designed for water storage. These vessels were often buried partially in the ground to keep the water cool and reduce evaporation. Some societies developed the technique of lining storage pits with clay to prevent water from seeping into the ground. In more advanced settlements, early humans created elaborate water management systems. They dug channels to direct water from reliable sources to their communities. In some cases, they built dams to create reservoirs, ensuring a more stable water supply. These early water management systems laid the groundwork for later civilizations' more complex irrigation and water distribution networks. The search for water also influenced migration patterns and settlement locations. Early human groups would often follow water sources as they moved across landscapes, and permanent settlements were almost always established near reliable water sources. This is why many of the world's oldest cities are located near rivers or natural springs. Different environments required different water-seeking strategies. In desert regions, early humans learned to read the landscape for signs of water, such as the presence of certain plants or changes in soil color. They developed techniques to collect morning dew using animal skins or by digging condensation traps. In tropical regions, they learned to identify which plants could provide safe drinking water, such as vines and certain types of bamboo. The knowledge of water sources was so valuable that it became part of early humans' cultural heritage. Water sources were often kept secret, and their locations passed down through generations. Sacred sites frequently developed around reliable water sources, showing the spiritual significance attributed to water by early societies. Early humans also learned to purify water using various methods. They discovered that running water was generally safer to drink than stagnant water. They learned to filter water through sand and gravel, and some societies developed the practice of boiling water, though this was likely initially done for cooking rather than purification. The skills developed by these early water seekers continue to influence how we find and manage water today. Modern well drilling techniques are based on the same principles used by our ancestors to locate groundwater. Traditional water finding methods are still used in many parts of the world, particularly in areas where modern technology is not readily available. Understanding how early humans found and managed water resources provides valuable insights into sustainable water management practices. Many of their methods were based on careful observation of natural systems and worked in harmony with the environment. As we face modern water challenges, including water scarcity and climate change, these ancient techniques offer important lessons in sustainable water management. The story of the water seekers is a testament to human ingenuity and adaptability. It shows how our ancestors' ability to find and manage water was crucial to our species' survival and the development of civilization. Their methods and discoveries continue to influence our relationship with this vital resource today. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors managed to survive in a world filled with dangerous predators and challenging environments? The story of human survival is intrinsically linked to our ability to create and use tools, particularly weapons. Let's explore this fascinating journey of how simple tools evolved into sophisticated weapons of war. The development of weapons began with our earliest ancestors' need to hunt and protect themselves. Around 2.6 million years ago, during the Paleolithic period, humans first began crafting simple tools from stone. These earliest weapons weren't created with warfare in mind. They were essential tools for survival, helping our ancestors hunt for food and defend against predators. The first breakthrough came with the discovery of stone flaking. By striking one stone against another, early humans learned they could create sharp edges and points. This technique led to the development of the first hand axes, also known as Oldowan tools. These crude but effective implements marked humanity's first step toward technological advancement. But why was this discovery so significant? It showed that our ancestors could not only use tools, but could deliberately manufacture them to serve specific purposes. As time progressed, tool-making techniques became more sophisticated. The development of the Acheulean hand axe, approximately 1.76 million years ago, represented a major leap forward. These tools were more symmetrical, carefully shaped on both sides, and showed evidence of planning and forethought in their creation. This wasn't just about making better tools. It demonstrated the growing cognitive abilities of our ancestors. But perhaps the most revolutionary development came with the invention of spears. Can you imagine the advantage this gave to early humans? Spears allowed our ancestors to hunt from a safer distance and take down larger prey. The oldest known wooden spears, discovered at Schöningen, Germany, date back to about 400,000 years ago. These weren't just sharpened sticks, They were carefully crafted weapons with fire-hardened tips, showing an understanding of both wood properties and heat treatment. The development of projectile weapons marked another crucial milestone. The invention of the atlatl or spear thrower around 30,000 years ago dramatically increased the distance and force with which spears could be thrown. This innovation meant hunters could strike from even greater distances, reducing the risks associated with hunting dangerous animals. The bow and arrow, appearing roughly 64,000 years ago, represented perhaps the most significant advancement in early weapons technology. What made this invention so special? It combined multiple technological innovations: the bow's stored energy, the arrow's aerodynamic design, and the precision required for both manufacturing and use. This weapon system required an understanding of physics, even if it was intuitive rather than theoretical. As human societies grew more complex, weapons began to serve a dual purpose: hunting and warfare. The development of metallurgy around 8000 BCE led to more durable and effective weapons. Copper, bronze, and eventually iron weapons replaced stone tools, though this transition occurred at different times in different parts of the world. The introduction of metal weapons brought about significant changes in human society. Metal weapons were more effective, but they were also more expensive and complex to produce. This led to the emergence of specialized craftsmen and eventually the development of distinct warrior classes in many societies. What's particularly fascinating is how weapon development influenced human social organization. The need for raw materials, specialized knowledge, and organized production systems led to more complex social structures. Communities needed to trade for materials they couldn't find locally, leading to the establishment of trade networks and sometimes conflicts over resources. The evolution of weapons also led to the development of defensive technologies. As weapons became more lethal, humans invented shields, armor, and fortifications. This continuous cycle of offensive and defensive innovation has been a constant throughout human history. It's important to note that these developments didn't occur uniformly across the globe. Different regions developed different types of weapons based on available materials, local needs, and cultural preferences. For instance, the composite bow, which combined different materials for greater power and efficiency, was perfected by Central Asian nomads who needed powerful, compact weapons for mounted warfare. The story of weapons development is really the story of human ingenuity and adaptation. Each new innovation built upon previous knowledge, showing how our ancestors continuously improved their tools and techniques. From simple stone tools to complex mechanical devices, the evolution of weapons reflects humanity's technological progress and growing understanding of the physical world. What makes this history particularly relevant is how it demonstrates human problem-solving abilities. Each new weapon development was a response to a specific challenge or need, showing how necessity truly is the mother of invention. This pattern of innovation and adaptation continues to this day, though in very different forms. Understanding this history helps us appreciate not just how far we've come technologically, but also how fundamentally human the drive to innovate and improve upon existing tools is. It's a reminder that every major technological advancement we enjoy today has its roots in these early developments, starting with those first stone tools crafted by our distant ancestors. Let's embark on a fascinating journey through one of humanity's most fundamental and enduring traditions, storytelling. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors preserved their memories, shared their experiences, and passed down their wisdom before the invention of writing? The answer lies in the art of oral tradition, a practice that shaped human culture for thousands of years and continues to influence us today. Oral traditions emerged as a crucial method of preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations. Think about it, in a world without books, computers, or smartphones, how would you ensure that important information survived? Our ancestors faced this challenge and developed sophisticated methods of memorization and storytelling to address it. The role of storytellers in ancient societies was far more significant than mere entertainment. These individuals were the living libraries of their communities, carrying vast amounts of information in their memories. They were responsible for preserving 1. Historical events, major battles, migrations, and natural disasters. 2. Genealogies, family lineages and tribal connections. 3. Cultural knowledge, customs, traditions, and social rules. 4. Practical skills, hunting techniques, medicinal knowledge, and survival skills. 5. Spiritual beliefs, religious practices, myths, and creation stories. What made these storytellers so effective? They developed various techniques to ensure accurate transmission of information. Rhythm and repetition played crucial roles. Many stories were told in specific patterns or accompanied by music, making them easier to remember. Think of how much easier it is to remember song lyrics compared to plain text. Our ancestors understood this principle well. These storytellers often held special positions in their societies. They underwent years of training, learning not just the stories themselves, but also the proper ways to tell them. In many cultures, the role of storyteller was hereditary, passed down from one generation to the next within certain families or clans. The methods used by ancient storytellers were surprisingly sophisticated. They employed various memory aids, mnemonic devices, rhythmic patterns, musical accompaniment, physical gestures, call and response techniques, ceremonial contexts. But how accurate were these oral traditions? Research has shown that oral histories can be remarkably precise over long periods. In many cases, archaeological evidence has confirmed events described in oral traditions passed down over hundreds or even thousands of years. For instance, Aboriginal Australian stories have been found to accurately describe geographical features that existed before the end of the last ice age, over 10,000 years ago. The practice of storytelling also served important social functions. Stories were used to 1. Teach moral lessons. 2. Establish social norms. 3. Strengthen community bonds. 4. Explain natural phenomena. 5. Preserve cultural identity. 6. Pass down practical knowledge. Different cultures developed their own unique storytelling traditions. In some societies, stories could only be told at specific times or in particular seasons. Others had elaborate protocols about who could tell certain stories and under what circumstances. These rules helped maintain the integrity and accuracy of the information being passed down. The impact of oral traditions extends far beyond ancient times. Many modern storytelling conventions can be traced back to these early practices. Consider how we still use repetition in children's stories, or how public speakers employ rhythmic patterns in their speeches. These techniques tap into the same cognitive processes that made ancient oral traditions so effective. The preservation of history through oral tradition also highlights important aspects of human memory and cognition. Studies of oral traditions have revealed that human memory can be extraordinarily reliable when properly trained and supported by cultural practices. This challenges our modern assumption that written records are always more accurate than oral ones. The transition from oral to written traditions marked a significant change in human history, but it didn't happen overnight. For thousands of years, oral and written traditions existed side by side, each serving different purposes. Even today, in many cultures, oral traditions continue to play vital roles in preserving and transmitting cultural knowledge. The legacy of ancient storytellers continues to influence us in unexpected ways. Modern public speaking, teaching methods, and even digital storytelling often incorporate techniques that were developed by ancient oral traditions. Understanding these connections helps us appreciate the sophisticated ways our ancestors preserved and shared knowledge. As we rely more heavily on digital technology to store and share information, it's worth reflecting on the enduring power of oral traditions. What can we learn from these ancient practices about effective communication and the preservation of knowledge? How might these insights help us better understand and use modern communication technologies? The story of the storytellers is, in many ways, the story of human culture itself. It reminds us that long before written language, humans developed sophisticated methods for preserving and transmitting knowledge across generations. This capacity for complex cultural transmission helped make us who we are today and continues to shape how we share and preserve information in the modern world. In the earliest human communities, raising children was a collective endeavor that shaped the future of our species. Let's explore how our ancestors approached child rearing and education, laying the groundwork for practices that would influence generations to come. Have you ever wondered how children learned and grew in prehistoric times? Unlike today's structured educational systems, early human communities had entirely different approaches to raising and teaching their young. The archaeological evidence, combined with studies of modern hunter-gatherer societies, gives us fascinating insights into these ancient practices. The concept of childhood itself was quite different in early human societies. Children were integrated into community life from a very young age, learning through direct observation and participation rather than formal instruction. But what exactly did this mean for their daily lives? From the moment they could walk, children in early communities were active participants in their society's daily activities. They weren't separated from adult work and responsibilities as they often are today. Instead, they learned by watching and doing, a practice that anthropologists call observational learning. This method proved incredibly effective for passing down essential survival skills and cultural knowledge. Tool-making was one of the first skills children would begin to learn. Archaeological evidence shows that some stone tools were clearly made by inexperienced hands, likely children practicing their craft. These learners' pieces are found in many archaeological sites, showing us that children were actively involved in learning crucial survival skills from a very young age. Small handprints in cave paintings also suggest that children were included in artistic and possibly ritualistic activities. But how did early communities ensure their children's survival? The answer lies in the collective approach to child rearing. Unlike our modern nuclear family structure, early human communities practiced what anthropologists call alloparenting, where multiple adults shared the responsibility of caring for children. This wasn't just limited to immediate family members. Entire communities would participate in raising children. The evidence for this communal child rearing can be found in various archaeological sites. Living spaces were designed to allow for easy supervision of children by multiple adults, and artifacts suggest that children were never far from adult activities. This approach had several advantages. It ensured children's safety, provided multiple learning opportunities, and allowed for the efficient transfer of knowledge and skills. What about play? Did prehistoric children have toys? Archaeological evidence suggests they did, though not in the way we might imagine. Small clay figurines, miniature tools, and naturally occurring objects like smooth stones and shells have been found in contexts suggesting they were used as toys. Play wasn't just for fun. It was a crucial learning tool that helped children develop physical skills and understand social roles. Education in early communities was highly practical and began early. Children learned to identify edible plants, track animals, make tools, create clothing, and build shelters, all skills essential for survival. This knowledge was passed down through a combination of direct instruction, observation, and hands-on experience. By the age of 6 or 7, most children would have already acquired many basic survival skills. Gender roles began to be learned early, though they were often more fluid than we might assume. Archaeological evidence suggests that both boys and girls learned basic survival skills, though they might later specialize in different areas based on their community's needs and cultural practices. The role of storytelling in education cannot be overlooked. As we learned in the previous act about oral traditions, stories were not just entertainment, they were crucial educational tools. Children learned their community's history, values, and practical knowledge through tales passed down through generations. These stories often featured young protagonists or animal characters, making them particularly engaging for young listeners. What about discipline and social development? Evidence suggests that early communities used a combination of positive reinforcement and natural consequences to teach children appropriate behavior. Physical punishment appears to have been rare, as suggested by studies of contemporary hunter-gatherer societies, which often show remarkable patience with children's learning processes. The transition to adulthood was typically marked by specific rites of passage, evidence of which we can find in archaeological records across different cultures. These ceremonies marked important stages in a child's development and their gradual integration into adult responsibilities. As communities grew more complex and settled into agricultural societies, child-rearing practices evolved. The introduction of farming created new roles for children, who often helped with agricultural tasks. This period also saw the beginnings of more formalized education systems in some societies. The legacy of these early child-rearing practices continues to influence us today. Modern research in child development often validates many of these ancient approaches: the importance of play-based learning, the benefits of mixed-age group interaction, and the value of hands-on experience in education. Understanding how our ancestors raised and educated their children provides valuable insights into human development and learning. It reminds us that many of the educational principles we consider modern, such as experiential learning, community involvement, and the importance of play, have very ancient roots indeed. What can we learn from these ancient practices? How might understanding our ancestors' approach to child rearing inform our modern educational methods? These questions continue to intrigue researchers and educators as we seek to balance the best of ancient wisdom with modern knowledge in raising the next generation. Have you ever wondered how ancient civilizations managed to build massive structures without modern technology? How did they move enormous blocks of stone weighing several tons? What drove them to undertake such monumental projects? Let's explore the fascinating world of our ancestors, the stone builders who shaped the landscape we see today. The story of stone construction begins around 10,000 BCE as humans started transitioning from nomadic lifestyles to settled communities. This period marked a crucial turning point in human history as people began to deliberately modify their environment through permanent structures. The earliest known stone constructions were simple walls and foundations for houses, but these humble beginnings would eventually lead to the creation of magnificent monuments that still stand today. One of the first major developments in stone construction was the creation of megalithic structures, large stones used to create monuments and buildings. The term megalith comes from the Greek words megas meaning great and lithos meaning stone. These structures appeared independently in various parts of the world, from Europe to Asia, Africa, and the Americas, showing how different cultures arrived at similar solutions to their building needs. The most basic form of megalithic construction was the menhir, a single standing stone placed vertically in the ground. These structures, found throughout Europe and Asia, could reach heights of up to 20 meters. While their exact purpose varies by location and culture, they often served as territorial markers, memorial stones, or had astronomical significance. Dolmens represent another significant achievement in early stone construction. These structures typically consisted of several large stone slabs supporting a massive capstone, creating a chamber-like space beneath. Dolmens were often used as burial chambers and have been found across Europe, Asia, and North Africa. The engineering knowledge required to build these structures was considerable, as the capstones could weigh several tons. But how did these ancient builders move such massive stones? Archaeological evidence and experimental archaeology have revealed several methods. One common technique was the use of wooden rollers placed under the stones, allowing them to be pulled along level ground. For uphill transportation, builders created earthen ramps. They also used leverage techniques with wooden beams to lift and position stones. These methods, while simple in concept, required extensive planning and coordination among large groups of workers. The development of stoneworking tools played a crucial role in these construction projects. Early stone builders used harder stones to shape softer ones, creating more precise building blocks. They discovered that heating certain types of stone and then rapidly cooling them with water could make them easier to break along natural fault lines. This technique, known as fire setting, was widely used in quarrying operations. The organization of labor for these massive construction projects reveals much about early social structures. Building large stone monuments required coordination among hundreds or sometimes thousands of workers. This level of organization suggests the existence of hierarchical societies with leaders who could command significant resources and labor. It also indicates that these communities had surplus food production, allowing some members to focus on construction rather than farming. The precision achieved by ancient stone builders is truly remarkable. Many megalithic structures show evidence of sophisticated engineering knowledge. For example, the stones used in some constructions were carefully shaped to fit together without mortar, a technique known as dry stone construction. This method required exceptional skill and planning, as each stone needed to be precisely cut to maintain structural stability. The tools used by stone builders evolved over time. Early tools were made from stone themselves, harder stones used to shape softer ones. Later, with the discovery of copper and bronze, metal tools became available. These included chisels, picks, and hammers, which allowed for more precise stone working. However, many of the most impressive ancient stone structures were built using only stone tools, demonstrating the remarkable capabilities of early builders. The legacy of these stone builders extends far beyond their physical creations. Their work laid the foundation for all subsequent architectural developments. The principles of load-bearing construction, the use of post and lintel systems, and the understanding of structural stability that they developed continue to influence architecture today. What motivated these ancient peoples to invest such enormous effort in stone construction? Archaeological evidence suggests multiple factors. Religious and ceremonial purposes were often primary motivators, as many stone structures served as temples, tombs, or astronomical observatories. Political power also played a role, with rulers commissioning large stone monuments as demonstrations of their authority and resources. The knowledge and skills developed by early stone builders were passed down through generations, creating traditions that would influence construction methods for thousands of years. Many of the techniques they pioneered, such as the use of counterweights and leverage, the creation of level foundations, and the understanding of structural balance, remain relevant to modern construction. The stone builders' achievements are even more impressive when we consider the constraints they worked under. Without written language in many cases, all technical knowledge had to be passed down through practical demonstration and oral tradition. They had no mathematical formulae or engineering textbooks, yet they created structures that have stood for thousands of years. As we look at these ancient stone monuments today, we can appreciate not just their physical presence, but what they tell us about human capability and determination. They stand as testament to our ancestors' ingenuity, organizational abilities, and ambitious vision. The stone builders laid the literal and figurative foundations for human civilization, creating works that continue to inspire awe and wonder millennia later. Throughout human history, our ancestors demonstrated remarkable ingenuity in utilizing every resource available to them, and one of the most versatile materials they mastered was bone. Have you ever wondered how early humans managed to create such precise tools and beautiful decorative items from something as seemingly simple as animal bones? Let's explore this fascinating chapter of human innovation. Bone working emerged as one of humanity's earliest technological achievements, dating back to the Paleolithic period. Our ancestors discovered that bones, particularly those from large mammals, possessed unique properties that made them ideal for crafting tools and ornaments. But what made bone such a special material? First, let's understand the composition of bone. Bone consists of both organic and inorganic materials, primarily collagen and calcium phosphate. This combination creates a material that is simultaneously strong and flexible, characteristics that proved invaluable to our ancestors. Unlike stone, which could shatter unpredictably during toolmaking, bone could be worked with greater control and precision. The process of bone working began with careful selection. Not all bones were suitable for toolmaking. Long bones from large animals, such as deer, elk, and bison, were particularly prized for their density and straight sections. After hunting and processing animals for food, our ancestors would carefully clean and prepare these bones for crafting. One of the most significant advantages of bone as a material was its ability to be modified through various techniques. Early humans developed methods to split, scrape, polish, and carve bone using stone tools. They discovered that soaking bones in water made them easier to work with, as the material became more pliable. This knowledge was passed down through generations, leading to increasingly sophisticated bone-working techniques. The range of tools created from bone was remarkably diverse. Needles, perhaps one of the most important bone innovations, revolutionized human capability for creating clothing and shelter. These needles, some as fine as modern sewing needles, were crafted with incredible precision. They featured eyes for threading sinew or plant fibers, enabling the creation of warm, fitted clothing that helped our ancestors survive in harsh climates. Bone awls, another crucial tool, were used for puncturing leather and other materials. These pointed implements were essential for leatherworking and basket making. Bone fishhooks demonstrated the ingenuity of early toolmakers who created barbed hooks that were both strong and effective for catching fish. But bone wasn't just for practical tools. Our ancestors recognized its potential for artistic expression and personal adornment. Bone beads, pendants, and decorative items have been found at archaeological sites worldwide, showing that the material played a significant role in early human culture and possibly religious practices. Some of the earliest known musical instruments were also made from bone, including flutes that still produce notes when played today. The mastery of bone working led to the development of specialized tools for specific tasks. Harpoons, for instance, were crafted with barbs that would catch in the flesh of marine mammals and fish, making them more effective hunting tools than simple spears. Bone spear points were particularly valuable because they could be easily repaired or replaced, unlike stone points that might shatter on impact. One of the most remarkable aspects of bone working was the development of composite tools. Our ancestors learned to combine bone with other materials like wood, stone, and sinew to create more effective implements. For example, bone foreshafts were used to connect stone spear points to wooden handles, creating weapons that were both strong and flexible. The knowledge required to work bone effectively was considerable. Craftspeople needed to understand the structure of different types of bones, how they would respond to various working techniques, and which bones were best suited for specific purposes. This knowledge was likely passed down through careful observation and instruction, forming an important part of early human technological tradition. Archaeological evidence shows that bone working wasn't limited to a single region or culture. From the frozen tundra of the Arctic to the tropical forests of Africa, human groups developed bone-working traditions suited to their specific needs and available resources. This universal adoption of bone working speaks to its fundamental importance in human technological development. The legacy of these bone-working masters continues to influence us today. Modern medical procedures use bone grafts and implements, drawing on principles similar to those discovered by our ancestors. The study of ancient bone tools has also provided valuable insights into human cognitive development, showing how our ancestors could conceptualize, plan, and execute complex manufacturing processes. As we reflect on the achievements of these early bone masters, we must appreciate the foundation they laid for human technological advancement. Their ability to transform raw bone into precise tools and beautiful ornaments demonstrates not just technical skill, but also the creative and problem-solving capabilities that define our species. What other materials might our ancestors have mastered that we haven't yet discovered in the archaeological record? How did their innovations in bone working influence later technological developments? The story of bone working is more than just a tale of toolmaking. It's a testament to human ingenuity and our ability to adapt and innovate using the resources available to us. These early craftspeople were truly masters of their material, understanding its properties and possibilities in ways that would influence human technology for millennia to come. Have you ever wondered how our ancestors first discovered which plants could heal and which ones could harm? The story of early humans learning about medicinal plants is one of the most fascinating chapters in our history, marked by careful observation, trial and error, and knowledge passed down through generations. Long before modern medicine and pharmaceutical companies existed, our ancestors developed a sophisticated understanding of plants and their healing properties. This knowledge didn't come easily. It was accumulated over thousands of years through careful observation and sometimes dangerous experimentation. Think about it. How did they know which plants could cure a headache and which ones could be deadly? The earliest evidence of humans using plants for medicinal purposes dates back to approximately 60,000 years ago. This discovery came from a Neanderthal burial site in Iraq, where archaeologists found pollen remains from various medicinal plants. These weren't just random plants. They were species that we still use today for their therapeutic properties, suggesting that even our ancient relatives had detailed knowledge of plant medicine. But what drove our ancestors to start exploring plants as medicine? The answer lies in basic survival instincts and observation. Early humans noticed that sick animals would sometimes eat specific plants they normally avoided. They observed that these animals often recovered after consuming these plants. This animal behavior became one of their first teachers in identifying potentially beneficial plants. The role of the first plant healers in early human societies was crucial. These individuals, often referred to as shamans or medicine men and women, were the keepers of vital knowledge about which plants could heal various ailments. They learned to identify plants not just by their appearance, but by their smell, taste, and the locations where they grew. They understood that the same plant might have different properties depending on when it was harvested or which part was used. These early healers developed complex systems for preparing plant medicines. They didn't just pick and eat plants, they learned to dry plants to preserve them for future use, create poultices for external application, brew teas and decoctions, extract plant juices, combine different plants for enhanced effects. Some of the earliest documented medicinal plants include 1. Willow bark containing salicylic acid, the predecessor of aspirin. 2. Aloe vera for burns and skin conditions. 3. Garlic for its antimicrobial properties. 4. Mint for digestive issues. 5. Chamomile for its calming effects. The knowledge of plant medicine wasn't limited to any one region. Every culture across the globe developed its own understanding of local medicinal plants. What's remarkable is how different cultures, separated by vast distances, often came to similar conclusions about certain plants' healing properties. This convergence of knowledge across different civilizations helps validate the effectiveness of these early discoveries. The process of learning about medicinal plants was also closely tied to understanding plant toxicity. Early healers had to learn which plants were poisonous and in what quantities. This knowledge was crucial not just for avoiding accidental poisoning, but also for understanding how some toxic plants, when used in carefully measured amounts, could become powerful medicines. The transmission of this knowledge was primarily oral, passed down from one generation to the next through apprenticeship and storytelling. This created a rich tradition of healing wisdom that combined practical knowledge with spiritual and cultural beliefs. Many of these early discoveries form the foundation of modern pharmacology. Approximately 25% of today's prescription drugs contain compounds that were first discovered in plants. Early plant healers also understood the importance of proper harvesting techniques. They developed rules about when to gather certain plants, time of day, season, phase of the moon, and how to harvest them sustainably to ensure future availability. They recognized that plants growing in different locations or conditions might have varying potencies. This ancient knowledge continues to influence modern medicine. Scientists today study traditional plant medicines to discover new drugs. Many important modern medicines were derived from traditional plant remedies. Morphine from the opium poppy, digoxin from foxglove, quinine from cinchona bark, Taxol from the Pacific yew tree. The legacy of these early plant healers extends beyond medicine. Their work laid the groundwork for modern pharmacology, botanical science, sustainable resource management, understanding of biodiversity, chemical extraction techniques. Their careful observations and methodical approach to documenting plant properties also represented one of humanity's first systematic scientific endeavors. They developed methods to test, verify, and reproduce results, basic principles that remain fundamental to scientific inquiry today. The plant healer's knowledge wasn't just about curing illness, it also included maintaining health through preventive use of plants. They understood that some plants could boost immunity, increase energy, or promote general well-being when used regularly. This holistic approach to health continues to influence alternative medicine practices today. As we face modern challenges like antibiotic resistance and the need for new medicines, the work of these early plant healers becomes increasingly relevant. Their ancient knowledge continues to guide modern research, reminding us that sometimes the best solutions to current problems can be found in the wisdom of our ancestors. Have you ever wondered what music sounded like tens of thousands of years ago? How did our ancient ancestors create melodies, and what inspired them to make music in the first place? Let's explore the fascinating world of Stone Age music, where the very first notes of human musical expression began to play. The story of Stone Age music begins with the fundamental human desire to create sounds and rhythms. Archaeological evidence shows that music has been an integral part of human culture for at least 40,000 years, though it likely existed even before that. The earliest musicians didn't have sophisticated instruments. They started with what nature provided: their voices, hands, and found objects from their environment. One of the most significant discoveries in prehistoric music was the development of percussion. Our ancestors discovered that hitting objects together could create rhythmic patterns. They would clap their hands, stamp their feet, and strike rocks or logs to create basic beats. These simple actions laid the groundwork for what would eventually become complex musical traditions. The first musical instruments were remarkably innovative for their time. Bone flutes, discovered in various archaeological sites across Europe, are among the oldest known musical instruments. The most famous example is the Hohlfels flute, found in Germany, dating back approximately 35,000 years. This remarkable instrument was carved from the wing bone of a griffon vulture and had precisely drilled holes that could produce different notes. But why did our ancestors make these instruments? Archaeological evidence suggests that music played multiple roles in Stone Age societies. It wasn't just entertainment. Music was deeply intertwined with religious ceremonies, social bonding, and possibly even communication between groups. Think about how a drum's rhythm could carry across long distances, potentially serving as an early form of long-distance communication. The materials used to create Stone Age instruments were diverse and creative. Besides bones, early humans used wood, though most wooden instruments haven't survived due to decomposition. Animal skins for drums, hollow logs, stone percussion instruments, reed pipes made from plant materials, animal horns and shells. The discovery of these instruments tells us something remarkable about our ancestors' cognitive abilities. Creating a musical instrument requires advanced planning, understanding of acoustics, even if primitive, and fine motor skills. The fact that they could craft these sophisticated tools suggests they had well-developed brains capable of abstract thinking and creativity. Stone Age music wasn't limited to instruments. Voice was likely the first musical instrument used for singing and creating vocal sounds. Evidence suggests that early humans had the same vocal anatomy as modern humans, meaning they could produce a wide range of sounds and potentially complex melodies. The connection between music and community life was profound. Archaeological evidence often shows musical instruments found in gathering spaces, suggesting music was a communal activity. Imagine a group of early humans gathered around a fire, creating rhythms together, singing, and moving to the beat. This shared musical experience would have strengthened social bonds and potentially aided in the development of language and culture. Seasonal celebrations and celestial events might have been marked by special musical performances. The acoustic properties of some cave sites suggest they might have been chosen specifically for their sound qualities, creating natural amphitheaters for musical performances and ceremonies. The evolution of Stone Age music also paralleled technological developments. As tool-making skills improved, so did the ability to create more sophisticated musical instruments. The same techniques used to craft hunting tools could be applied to creating more complex musical instruments. One fascinating aspect of Stone Age music is its potential role in human cognitive development. The act of making music engages multiple areas of the brain simultaneously, and some researchers suggest that musical activity might have played a role in the development of human intelligence and social cooperation. The legacy of Stone Age music continues to influence us today. Many modern musical instruments can trace their origins back to these prehistoric innovations. The basic principles of rhythm, melody, and harmony that we use today were first explored by our Stone Age ancestors. What's particularly remarkable is how universal music became across human societies. Every known human culture has some form of musical expression, suggesting that the musical innovations of the Stone Age spread along with human migration patterns across the globe. As we conclude our exploration of Stone Age music, consider this. The next time you hear a drum beat or a simple melody, you're connecting with a tradition that began over 40,000 years ago. Our ancient ancestors may not have had written language or complex technology, but they found ways to express themselves through music, leaving an enduring legacy that continues to resonate through time. The story of Stone Age music is not just about the instruments they created or the sounds they made. It's about the fundamental human need to express, create, and connect through sound. It's a testament to human ingenuity and creativity, showing that even in the most primitive conditions, humans found ways to make their world more beautiful through music. Have you ever wondered how ancient civilizations found their way across vast oceans or predicted the changing of seasons? The answer lies in their remarkable ability to read the stars and understand celestial patterns. Let's explore how our ancestors became the first astronomers, developing knowledge that would shape human civilization for millennia to come. The story of skywatching begins with our earliest ancestors who noticed regular patterns in the movement of the sun, moon, and stars. These observations weren't merely casual, they were crucial for survival and development. Ancient peoples across every continent developed sophisticated methods of tracking celestial movements, leading to the birth of astronomy as one of humanity's first sciences. The most fundamental observation was the daily journey of the sun across the sky. Early humans recognized that the sun's path followed a predictable pattern, rising in the east and setting in the west. This basic understanding helped them track time during the day and plan their activities. But their observations went much deeper than this. They noticed that the sun's position at sunrise and sunset shifted throughout the year, reaching its northernmost and southernmost points at what we now call the summer and winter solstices. The moon became another crucial celestial timekeeper. Its regular phases, from new moon to full moon and back again, provided a natural calendar. Early sky watchers noticed that these cycles took approximately 29.5 days, giving birth to the concept of the month. The moon's predictable patterns helped communities plan gatherings, ceremonies, and hunting expeditions. Stars played an equally important role in early astronomy. Different cultures identified distinct patterns in the stars, creating constellations that often reflected their own mythologies and worldviews. The most practical use of stellar observation was navigation. Seafaring peoples, like the Polynesians, developed incredibly accurate methods of ocean navigation based on their knowledge of star positions. They could determine their latitude by observing the height of certain stars above the horizon. One of the most significant achievements of early astronomers was the identification of planets. Unlike stars, these wandering stars moved in different patterns across the night sky. 5 planets, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn, were visible to the naked eye and were tracked by various civilizations. Each culture assigned different meanings and importance to these celestial bodies. The development of astronomical observation tools marked another crucial step. While early sky watchers relied primarily on their naked eyes, they began creating simple yet effective instruments. Stone circles and megalithic structures, like Stonehenge, served as astronomical calendars, marking important solar and lunar events. Simple devices like shadow sticks helped track the sun's movement and measure time during the day. Agricultural societies particularly benefited from astronomical knowledge. By tracking celestial cycles, they could predict seasonal changes and plan their planting and harvesting accordingly. This understanding was so crucial that many early civilizations combined their astronomical knowledge with religious beliefs, creating complex systems of celestial worship and timekeeping. The Mayans, for instance, developed an incredibly accurate calendar based on their astronomical observations. They could predict solar eclipses and developed complex mathematical systems to track Venus's movements. In ancient Egypt, the annual flooding of the Nile was predicted by watching for the first annual rising of Sirius, the brightest star in the night sky. Early astronomers also noticed patterns that helped them predict eclipses. These dramatic events, where the sun or moon temporarily disappeared, were often seen as powerful omens. By carefully tracking the moon's motion, some cultures could predict when these events would occur, giving their leaders significant influence over their communities. The legacy of these early skywatchers continues to influence us today. Our current calendar system, the division of time into months, and many of our navigation techniques have roots in these ancient observations. Even the names of our days of the week in many languages reflect the 7 visible celestial bodies known to ancient astronomers: the sun, moon, and 5 visible planets. What's particularly remarkable about early astronomy is its universal nature. Cultures separated by vast distances and with no contact often made similar observations and developed parallel systems for tracking celestial movements. This demonstrates how fundamental astronomy was to human development and understanding of the world. The skywatchers' greatest achievement was perhaps their ability to recognize patterns in what seemed like chaos to others. They understood that the universe operated according to regular, predictable cycles. This realization was one of humanity's first steps towards scientific thinking and the understanding that natural phenomena could be studied, predicted, and explained. As we look up at the same stars today, we're connecting with a tradition that spans the entire history of human civilization. The questions that drove our ancestors to study the sky, where are we? How does our world work? What's our place in the universe? Continue to drive scientific inquiry today. The skywatchers laid the foundation for all future astronomical discoveries, making them truly among humanity's first scientists. Their legacy reminds us that science began not with complex instruments or mathematical formulas, but with careful observation, pattern recognition, and the human desire to understand our place in the cosmos. What started as a practical need for navigation and timekeeping evolved into one of humanity's most profound intellectual pursuits. Throughout human history, community gatherings have served as the cornerstone of social organization and cultural development. Let's explore how these essential gatherings shaped our ancestors' lives and continue to influence modern society. Have you ever wondered why humans are inherently drawn to gathering in groups? At its core, community gatherings emerge from our fundamental need for social connection and survival. Early human societies recognized that coming together regularly strengthened their bonds and improved their chances of survival. These gatherings weren't just casual meetups, they served multiple crucial purposes that helped establish the foundation of human civilization. One of the primary functions of community gatherings was decision-making. Early societies developed systems where members would come together to discuss important matters affecting the group. These meetings often took place in designated spaces, such as circular clearings or communal structures, where everyone could see and hear each other. The practice of collective decision-making through gatherings gave birth to the earliest forms of democratic processes. But what made these gatherings so effective in maintaining social order? The answer lies in their regularity and structure. Communities established specific times for different types of gatherings, each serving a distinct purpose. For example, seasonal gatherings coincided with agricultural cycles, allowing communities to coordinate planting and harvesting efforts. These agricultural meetings ensured food security and helped distribute resources efficiently among community members. Ceremonial gatherings played an equally important role in community life. These events marked significant life transitions such as births, coming-of-age ceremonies, marriages, and deaths. Through these ceremonies, communities maintained their cultural continuity and passed down important traditions from one generation to the next. Think about how many of today's celebrations still follow patterns established thousands of years ago. Trade gatherings represented another crucial aspect of community life. Regular markets and fairs brought different groups together, facilitating not just the exchange of goods, but also ideas, technologies, and cultural practices. These gatherings helped establish early trading networks and fostered inter-community relationships that often led to alliances and peaceful coexistence. The social hierarchy within communities often became most visible during these gatherings. Leaders, elders, and spiritual guides played specific roles in organizing and conducting community events. However, these gatherings also served as opportunities for social mobility, where individuals could demonstrate their skills, wisdom, or leadership abilities to the community. Knowledge sharing was another vital component of community gatherings. Elders would use these occasions to pass down oral histories, practical skills, and cultural knowledge to younger generations. Stories, songs, and dances performed during gatherings served as educational tools, preserving important information about survival skills, moral values, and community history. The practice of feast sharing during gatherings helped strengthen social bonds and redistribute resources within the community. These communal meals did more than satisfy hunger, they created opportunities for social interaction, conflict resolution, and celebration. The tradition of sharing food during gatherings remains a universal human practice that continues to bring people together. Religious and spiritual gatherings formed a significant part of community life. These events helped people make sense of their world and cope with life's uncertainties. Regular religious gatherings created a sense of cosmic order and provided emotional support through shared beliefs and practices. How did these gatherings influence the development of permanent settlements? As communities began gathering more frequently, they needed designated spaces for these meetings. This necessity led to the construction of permanent structures and eventually contributed to the development of villages and cities. The locations of these gathering spaces often became the heart of early settlements. The role of women in community gatherings varied across cultures, but was generally significant. Women often took charge of preparing feast foods, organizing ceremonial details, and maintaining social networks through these gatherings. Their participation was crucial in ensuring the smooth functioning of community events and maintaining social harmony. Community gatherings also served as conflict resolution mechanisms. Regular meetings provided opportunities for addressing grievances, mediating disputes, and maintaining peace within and between communities. The public nature of these gatherings ensured transparency in conflict resolution and helped establish social norms and justice systems. The impact of community gatherings on human psychology cannot be understated. Regular social interaction through these gatherings helped satisfy our innate need for belonging and connection. The emotional support and sense of identity provided by community gatherings contributed to individual and collective well-being. Looking at modern society, we can see how many of these traditional gathering practices have evolved but maintained their essential functions. From town hall meetings to religious services, from festivals to sporting events, the human need for community gathering remains strong. These gatherings continue to serve as spaces for decision-making, celebration, conflict resolution, and cultural preservation. Understanding the historical significance of community gatherings helps us appreciate their continued importance in maintaining social cohesion and cultural continuity. As we face new challenges in our increasingly digital world, how can we preserve the essential benefits of community gatherings while adapting to changing social patterns? The study of community gatherings provides valuable insights into human social organization and cultural development. It reminds us that despite technological advances, our fundamental need for face-to-face interaction and community connection remains unchanged. How will future generations maintain these crucial social bonds while navigating an increasingly interconnected yet physically distant world? The story of Native American traditions isn't confined to history books or museum displays. It's a living, breathing legacy that continues to shape lives today. Let's explore how ancient practices have evolved and remained relevant in modern Native American communities, creating an unbroken chain of cultural continuity that spans thousands of years. Have you ever wondered how ancient traditions survive in our fast-paced modern world? The answer lies in the remarkable adaptability and resilience of Native American cultures. Traditional practices haven't simply been preserved like artifacts. They've evolved while maintaining their core spiritual and cultural significance. This dynamic process of cultural continuation is what we'll explore in detail. One of the most significant ways ancient practices connect to modern traditions is through language. While many Native American languages faced near extinction during the 19th and 20th centuries, there's now a powerful revival movement across numerous communities. For instance, the Navajo language, which played a crucial role during World War II through the famous code talkers, is now being taught in schools and through community programs. Young people are learning their ancestral languages not just as a means of communication, but as a way to understand their cultural worldview and traditional knowledge. Ceremonial practices provide another strong link between past and present. Traditional ceremonies like the green corn ceremony among southeastern tribes, the sun dance of the Plains peoples, and the potlatch of the Pacific Northwest continue to be practiced today, though they've adapted to contemporary circumstances. These ceremonies maintain their spiritual significance while incorporating modern elements that make them relevant to current generations. The traditional concept of the medicine wheel, used by many Native American tribes, exemplifies how ancient wisdom applies to modern life. The medicine wheel's teachings about balance, harmony, and the interconnectedness of all themes remain particularly relevant in today's world, where many people seek holistic approaches to health and well-being. Modern Native American healing practices often combine traditional methods with contemporary medical knowledge, creating an integrated approach to wellness. Food sovereignty movements represent another powerful connection between ancient and modern practices. Many Native American communities are reviving traditional agricultural methods and food systems. Did you know that many common foods we eat today, like corn, beans, squash, and potatoes, were first cultivated by indigenous peoples? Modern Native American farmers are reclaiming these agricultural traditions, often combining ancestral knowledge with sustainable farming practices to address contemporary challenges like food security and environmental conservation. The arts provide yet another bridge between past and present. Traditional craft techniques like beadwork, pottery, and weaving continue to be practiced, but artists often incorporate contemporary themes and materials. Native American music has evolved to include modern instruments and styles while maintaining traditional elements and spiritual significance. These artistic expressions serve as both a link to the past and a means of addressing contemporary issues facing Native communities. Environmental stewardship represents one of the most significant ways ancient wisdom informs modern practice. Traditional ecological knowledge, passed down through generations, offers valuable insights for addressing current environmental challenges. Many Native American communities are at the forefront of environmental protection efforts, applying traditional principles of resource management to modern conservation challenges. Education plays a crucial role in maintaining cultural continuity. Modern tribal colleges and universities combine traditional knowledge with contemporary academic disciplines. Many Native American communities have developed educational programs that teach traditional skills alongside modern subjects, ensuring young people are prepared for contemporary life while maintaining their cultural identity. The concept of tribal sovereignty continues to evolve in the modern context. While rooted in ancient systems of governance, tribal nations today engage with federal and state governments while maintaining their distinct political and cultural identities. This demonstrates how traditional principles of self-governance adapt to contemporary political realities. Technology has become a powerful tool for preserving and sharing traditional knowledge. Digital archives, online language programs, and social media platforms help communities document and share their cultural heritage. Rather than diminishing traditional practices, technology often serves to strengthen them by making them more accessible to younger generations and geographically dispersed community members. Importantly, the legacy continues through the everyday lives of Native American people. Traditional values like respect for elders, community responsibility, and connection to the land inform how many Native Americans navigate modern life. These aren't relics of the past, but living principles that guide decisions and actions in the present. The continuation of Native American traditions isn't about preserving them unchanged in amber. Instead, it's about maintaining their essential meaning and value while allowing them to evolve and remain relevant. This dynamic process ensures that these traditions continue to provide guidance, meaning, and cultural identity for future generations. As we look to the future, the legacy of Native American traditions offers valuable lessons for all of humanity. The emphasis on community, sustainability, and spiritual connection to the natural world provides important perspectives for addressing modern challenges. The ability of these traditions to adapt while maintaining their core values demonstrates how ancient wisdom can remain relevant and vital in the modern world. The legacy continues not as a static preservation of the past, but as a living, evolving tradition that bridges ancient wisdom with contemporary life. It's a testament to the resilience and adaptability of Native American cultures, and a reminder that traditional knowledge has an important role to play in shaping our collective future.